Chapter 609. Li Mu thought for a while and said to Princess Linglong, "It's better not to tell her about these things. It was nothing for a man to suffer a little outside." He was not afraid of the Empress being angry, but he did not want her to feel sorry for him. He looked at Princess Linglong again and asked, "Are you ready?" Princess Linglong nodded her head. Li Mu let go of her hand, and the sun-shooting bow appeared in his hand. At the same time, an illusory shadow appeared in the cave. This was a doppelganger that Li Mu had created in a month. This doppelganger contained his full power. The doppelganger walked into Li Mu's body, and Li Mu shot the bow into the sky. After a flash of light, the earth peak flashed and a transparent shield collapsed. Li Mu held Princess Linglong's hand and immediately used shrinking distance. The two of them appeared 100 miles away from the demonic island. Almost at the same time when the sun-shooting bow shattered the protective array, Xian Ming, who was cultivating in the tower in the middle of the island, suddenly raised her head. Her cold and emotionless face revealed a rare look of shock. She blurted out, "This is the aura of the sun-shooting bow." Then her body moved out of the tower. At the same time, she felt a spatial fluctuation coming from one of the palaces on the earth peak. Xian Ming scanned with her spiritual will, but she did not find Princess Linglong. The aura of the pure yang body had also completely disappeared. Li Mu. She immediately realized something, and a shocking roar reverberated throughout the demonic island. Spots of white light emitted from Xian Ming's body, and in the next moment she disappeared into thin air, leaving only a name reverberating on the demonic island. What happened? It sounded like the voice of the fifth forefather. Who angered the fifth forefather? Li Mu. Did this person do something again? Only after Xian Ming left did the experts on the demonic island react. They all flew into the sky with a confused look, not knowing what had happened. At this moment, 100 miles away from the demonic island, two figures appeared from the void. Princess Linglong's pretty face was filled with astonishment. Just a moment ago they were still in the lair of diabolism. In the next moment they were above the sea and they could no longer see the ghostly island. This kind of long-distance teleportation was something that even transcendence experts couldn't master. Before she could come back to her senses, a white line suddenly appeared on the surface of the sea in the distance, and it was approaching them at an extremely fast speed. Princess Linglong asked curiously, "What is that white line?" Li Mu was alarmed and immediately said, "Leave quickly." That was not a white line. It was steam rising from the boiling sea. Xian Ming had caught up. As expected of the 5 ancestors of the demonic Tao, an old monster from 10,000 years ago. Even though Li Mu had taken the initiative, she could still catch up so quickly. Li Mu held Princess Linglong's hand and disappeared again. After 3 breaths, Xian Ming appeared at their previous location. Her face was cold as she continued to chase to the west. She said coldly, "Let's see how many times you can move." After teleporting out of the void once again, Li Mu's magic power had already been depleted by a small half. Although the shrinking ground was extremely fast, it also consumed a lot of spiritual power. Usually he would recover his spiritual power as he hurried along. In this situation he obviously didn't have the time to recover his spiritual power. As soon as the two of them appeared, the white line appeared on the surface of the sea again. Li Mu continued to move. This time he and Princess Linglong appeared on a small island. Floating above the island, Li Mu didn't run away again. Instead he quietly waited for Xian Ming's arrival. After a few breaths, the white line on the surface of the sea swept over, and the figure of a woman in white walked out. She was about 100 feet away from Li Mu. However, she didn't attack Li Mu. Instead she looked down at the sea below and said coldly, "Come out." A shadow flew out from the sea and turned into an old man. He cupped his hands at Xian Ming and said, "Greetings, Lord Xian Ming." Looking at the old man in front of her, Xian Ming's expression became dignified. She said coldly, "Ghost servant, you dare to stop me?" When she was at her peak, even the Ghost Lord was afraid of her. She didn't care about a mere ghost servant. However, in this life she hadn't cultivated to the peak. The ghost servant in front of her had the strength to fight with her. The ghost servant just looked at her calmly and said, "I have to obey the master's order. Lord Xian Ming, please don't blame me. Then let's die together with them." Xian Ming's expression was cold. The sea below also froze instantly. Her cold voice seemed to come from the endless hell. As soon as Xian Ming's voice fell, Li Mu felt that the blood and primordial spirit in his body were about to break out. Princess Linglong's face was even paler. Her primordial spirit shadow appeared outside her body. Li Mu immediately sent her into the flask space. He also distanced himself from the battlefield. Both Xian Ming and the ghost servant had the strength of the peak of the transcendent realm. In the center of their battle, within a radius of 10 miles, huge waves rolled up. The sea water boiled into fog for a moment and then froze into ice for a moment. The sky also dimmed. The white clouds near the battlefield were scattered and disappeared. Li Mu was dozens of miles away. His hair and clothes fluttered because of the wind caused by the aftermath of the spell. The ghost servant's spiritual power was more profound, but Xian Ming's experience was obviously more abundant. The two of them couldn't determine the winner in a short time. However, if the battle dragged on for a long time, the experts of the demon sect from the Ghost Island would arrive. In Li Mu's hand, the sun-shooting bow appeared again. He quickly locked onto Xian Ming and shot an arrow. This arrow took away one of Xian Ming's arms. Li Mu's spiritual power was also depleted. He quickly used the incantation to recover his spiritual power and waited for the second arrow to be shot. There was no need to talk about martial ethics when dealing with the enemy. It would be best if he could kill her today. Even if he couldn't, he had to end the battle as soon as possible. After being hit by the sun-shooting bow, Xian Ming's strength was damaged. In the battle with the ghost servant, she immediately fell into a disadvantage. At this time, the ghost servant suddenly said, "Ghost Empress, please lend me the sun-shooting bow." Li Mu didn't react at first. He was stunned for a moment before he realized what the ghost empress meant. At present, other than the Tao Te Ching that could injure the enemy 800 and himself 1,000, the sun-shooting bow was his biggest trump card. Li Mu naturally couldn't give it to others easily. This bow couldn't recognize an owner. Whoever had it could use it. If it was given to an evil person, wouldn't there be endless troubles? Li Mu was still hesitating, but Xian Ming's expression had changed greatly. She no longer fought with the ghost servant. Her body turned into a white light and disappeared into the sky in a flash. The ghost servant slowly flew back. He cupped his hands at Li Mu and said, "Please forgive this old servant for being rash. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to intimidate her." Li Mu hadn't seen the other abilities of the 5 ancestors of the demonic way, but her ability to escape was top-notch. Both times, she was decisive and straightforward, without any hesitation. No wonder her memory could be safely passed down for 10,000 years without any mistakes. Li Mu didn't delay. He and the ghost servant flew to the coast of the South Sea. At this moment, the crisis had been resolved. However, 3 days later, when the third ancestor woke up, they would have to bear the fury of an 8th realm expert. He had to make thorough arrangements early. When Li Mu brought Princess Linglong back to Yong, Xian Ming, who had lost an arm, also returned to Ghost Island. He and the third ancestor didn't expect that Li Si was actually Li Mu. His purpose in coming to Ghost Island was to rescue Princess Linglong and steal the Heavenly Book. He actually succeeded. Although the Sage sect had obtained a page of the Heavenly Book from Yong, 3 pages had been snatched away by Li Mu. It was a disastrous loss. What was even more infuriating was that everyone, including her and the third ancestor, had been fooled by Li Mu. For 10,000 years, no one had ever done such a thing. The Sage sect had never lost the Heavenly Book they had obtained. The commotion at the Earth Peak was too great. In addition, the 5th ancestor had returned with an arm missing. This matter quickly caused a huge uproar on Ghost Island. Li Si is a spy. He is that Li Mu from the Great Zhou? He snatched away Princess Linglong and the Heavenly Book. Countless demonic path powerhouses were shocked speechless by this news. No one doubted Li Si because he was brought back by their own people. It was even more impossible for them to think that he was Li Mu. Who was Li Mu? The future headmaster of the Fulu school, the official of the Empress of the Great Zhou, the only demon empress of the Queen of the Thousand Demons, the man behind the Ghost Lord of the Ghost Realm. He single-handedly influenced the situation of the mainland and was the #1 enemy of the Sage sect. He was the man with the most power and the most prominent status on the mainland. Who was Li Si? A good-for-nothing who was ravaged by women every day. Who would have thought that they were the same person? The 5th elder is in trouble this time. He was the one who brought Li Mu back. He can't escape responsibility. There is no doubt about the 5th elder's loyalty. I'm afraid that the 5th elder had been tricked by Li Mu from the beginning. This person knows when to yield and when to stand tall. He is the most difficult enemy of the Sage sect. If he escapes this time, there will be endless trouble in the future. In the midst of the crowd's discussion, the 5th elder's face was ghastly pale, and he gradually collapsed to the ground. 9th elder's face was lifeless as he clenched the medicinal pill he had concocted for Li Si. With a bang he crushed the jade bottle. Chapter 610. Father. Mother. In the Yong Imperial Palace, Princess Linglong threw herself into the arms of a graceful and noble woman, tears streaming down her cheeks. After being abducted by the demon sect, she never thought that she would ever see her parents again. The woman's eyes were also brimming with tears. Holding her daughter's face, she asked with concern, "My poor daughter. You must have suffered a lot." Princess Linglong gazed at Li Mu. She hadn't suffered at all. The one who had truly endured humiliation and suffering was Li Mu. Wiping her tears, she looked at the woman and said, "Mother, don't worry. With Big Brother Li here, they didn't do anything to me." The young emperor and empress respectfully bowed to Li Mu, gratefully saying, "Many thanks, Lord Li. If it weren't for Lord Li, my daughter would likely have met with misfortune." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "You're welcome. This is what the Great Zhou should do." The Yong Empire paid so much protection money to the Great Zhou every year. This was the purpose of the protection money. Soon after, Li Mu said, "Although I've already brought Linglong back, the danger from the demon sect has yet to be resolved. In 3 days, one of the demon sect's 3 patriarchs, an 8th-level expert, will awaken from his slumber. It's very likely that he will take revenge on the Yong Empire. We need to prepare early." When everyone heard this, their faces were filled with worry. The Yong Empire was already unable to resist the 7th-level demon sect's 5 patriarchs. If an 8th-level demon sect's 5 patriarchs came, the Yong Empire would be in danger of annihilation. Seeing their worry, Li Mu said, "Don't worry. I've already made arrangements. Even if the demon sect's 3 patriarchs really descend upon the Yong Empire, there is no need to fear them." Who was Li Mu? He was the continent's legend. He had pacified the Great Zhou, allied with the Yao Nation and allied with the Ghost Realm. Everything he had done was worthy of being recorded in the annals of history. Not long ago, he had charged into the demon sect's lair alone and rescued Linglong from the hands of the world's top experts. The people of the Yong Empire had long since regarded him as their backbone. The Yong Emperor solemnly said, "If Lord Li has any instructions, the Yong Empire will definitely do them." Li Mu nodded and said, "I need some high-grade spiritual jades and some top-grade materials for setting up arrays." The Yong Emperor immediately replied, "We will have someone make the arrangements." Li Mu had only felt the tip of the iceberg from Tianjizi. That mountain-like pressure was still fresh in his memory. There was an insurmountable gap between the 7th realm and the 8th realm. Even if several 7th realm cultivators joined forces, they were still no match for an 8th realm cultivator. However, if several of them were not enough, what about 10 of them? The state of Yong currently had 3 transcendents. The southern states had the 5 Taoist sects, the Ghost Realm, the Yao Nation, the 4 Buddhist sects, and the Great Zhou. Li Mu hadn't calculated in detail before, but after doing so, he realized that he could mobilize so many transcendents just by relying on his reputation and the subordinates he controlled. If he could integrate this force, even the 3 ancestors of the demon sect wouldn't be able to return alive. The only problem was that the 4 Taoist sects were still fine. They were originally in the south and could support the state of Yong in a short period of time. However, the Great Zhou, the Fulu School, the Yao Nation, and the Ghost Realm were too far away from the state of Yong and couldn't provide timely assistance. Unless he could gather them together in an extremely short period of time. Coincidentally, the Heavenly Tomes of the Spirit Array sect recorded an ultra-long-distance teleportation array. This kind of teleportation array could easily teleport people tens of thousands of li or even tens of thousands of li away in an instant. It could be said that it utilized the power of space to the limit. The only drawback was that it consumed too many resources. Every teleportation required a large amount of high-grade spiritual jades as the energy source. Once or twice was fine, but if used too many times, even a large sect like the Fulu School would use up all of its spiritual jades. If that weren't the case, Li Mu would have already constructed countless of these teleportation arrays. One was in the Divine Capital, one was in the Yao Nation, one was in the Ghost Realm, and one was in Mount Baiyun. How much time could they save? As one of the wealthiest people on the continent, Li Mu still hadn't chosen to construct this kind of teleportation array. This was enough to show just how expensive it was. In the current situation, he had no choice but to do so. If the 3 ancestors of the demonic Tao personally descended, the state of Yong would undoubtedly be destroyed. It could be said that apart from the Xuanzong, the demon sect could destroy any of the various powers on the continent. If he constructed long-distance teleportation arrays in every region, he would be able to provide reinforcements when one side was in trouble. The cost of teleportation arrays was too great, so he wouldn't normally use them. He would only activate them when the various powers were facing a great crisis. On the way back, Li Mu had already sent a message to the various powers, ordering them to immediately prepare the materials. In the following 3 days and 2 nights, he wouldn't be able to rest for even a moment. After personally helping the state of Yong construct the teleportation array and teaching them how to use it, Li Mu immediately headed for the spirit array sect. It would take too long for him to set up the teleportation array by himself. He needed to find some helpers from the spirit array sect. Meanwhile, in the state of Yong, Princess Linglong was telling the imperial family in detail about what had happened in the past few days. A month ago, everyone, including the Emperor of Yong, believed that the Great Zhou's promise to help them rescue Linglong and that they had to wait for news was just a temporary prevarication. Unexpectedly, a month later, Li Mu had brought Linglong back in one piece. After hearing the entire story from Linglong, everyone's hearts were in turmoil, unable to calm down for a long time. As a Realm 6 cultivator, how much courage did one need to venture deep into the demon nest alone? To put down one's noble status and use the most humble attitude to accept inhumane torture and humiliation every day, all for the sake of waiting for an opportunity? How many people could do such a thing? More importantly, he had succeeded. He had successfully rescued Linglong from the hands of countless demonic Dao experts. It could be said to be a miracle. This should have been an impossible task, but he had done it. Not only had he rescued Linglong, but he had also snatched away the 3 pages of the heavenly tomes of the demonic Dao, creating a miracle among miracles. It was no wonder that even the Empress of the Great Zhou had pledged her heart to him. In Princess Linglong's mind, that tall and lofty figure had already become like a mountain. The Empress of Yong sighed softly and said, "We owe Lord Li a huge favor. I don't know how we can repay him." The Emperor of Yong thought for a long time and said, "Why don't?" The husband and wife looked at each other, understanding each other's intentions. The Empress of Yong said, "That will depend on whether Linglong agrees or not." Princess Linglong nodded repeatedly, "I agree. I agree to anything." The Emperor of Yong said, "We are prepared to give the Emperor's chi to Lord Li." Princess Linglong said disappointedly, "So father was talking about the Emperor's chi?" The Emperor of Yong looked at her and asked, "Then what did you think it was?" Princess Linglong sighed softly and said, "I thought it was something else. Like I said, how could there be such a good thing?" 2 days later. In these 2 days, Li Mu had traveled all over the Zhu continent's Sheng continent, going back and forth to the Great Zhou, the Yao Nation, the Ghost Realm, and finally back to Yong. Although he was a little tired, he had at least finished setting up all the teleportation formations and no longer needed to be threatened by the demonic Dao's 3 ancestors. Although he had spent an immeasurable amount of resources, the effects were obvious. The ultra-long-distance teleportation formations were the foundation of the various factions' mutual support. Henceforth, when the various factions encountered a crisis, they would no longer have to fight alone. They would be able to gather their peak forces at the first moment. Similar incidents like the heavenly tomes of Yong being stolen would never happen again. In the evening, the Yong imperial family held a grand banquet in his honor. After the banquet, the Emperor of Yong cupped his hands and bowed to Li Mu, saying, "Lord Li has worked hard." Li Mu waved his hand and said, "As long as all parties can work together to resist the demonic Dao in the future, a bit of hard work is nothing." The Emperor of Yong continued, "Lord Li has done a great favor for Yong. We have discussed it with our fellow clansmen and wish to give Lord Li a gift. Please accept it." Li Mu waved his hand again and said, "Yong has paid tribute to Great Zhou and Great Zhou has protected you. This official does not need any gifts." The Emperor of Yong persisted, "If it weren't for Lord Li, Yong would have faced destruction. As the Emperor, we ought to thank Lord Li heavily. As her father, Lord Li has saved my daughter. Please give me a chance to repay you." Since the Emperor of Yong was so insistent, Li Mu found it difficult to refuse. He said, "Since that is the case, I will accept deferentially." The Emperor of Yong revealed a smile and said, "We have discussed it with the madam and have decided to give Linglong." Li Mu's complexion changed greatly and he hastily said, "You can't. You absolutely can't. One didn't necessarily need to repay a life-saving favor with one's body. Xiaobai was still lining up, so how could Linglong have a turn? Moreover, her name wasn't in the Empress booklet." The Emperor of Yong simply didn't know that he was biting the hand that fed him. At this moment, the Emperor of Yong continued, "I will give Linglong's strand of Imperial Qi to Lord Li. Please accept it." Li Mu stared blankly for a moment before asking, "So you were talking about Imperial Qi?" The Emperor of Yong nodded and said, "Half a year ago, Yong's ancestral shrine condensed another strand of Imperial Qi. Originally, it was to wait for Linglong to advance to the 6th level before allowing her to refine it. What did Lord Li think it was?" Li Mu coughed softly, his complexion returning to normal. He changed the topic and said, No, this gift is too valuable. I cannot accept it. However, the young emperor persisted. We have provoked such a powerful enemy. Even if Yong had another 7th level expert, it would be useless. Linglong has already agreed to this matter. Lord Li, please don't refuse. The Great Zhou hadn't condensed a single strand of imperial qi for 50 years. The two factions had argued for several years over who should possess the imperial qi. This gift could no longer be described as valuable. Li Mu continued to refuse. No, I truly cannot accept this gift. The young emperor thought for a moment before asking, Does Lord Li mean that you want us to betroth Linglong to you? Li Mu flatly said, How is that possible? Am I that kind of person? Hearing this, the young emperor fell into deep thought. Li Mu thought for a moment. He had too many beauties by his side. In the eyes of those who didn't understand him, he really did seem like that kind of person. To prove that he really wasn't that kind of person, Li Mu could say, In that case, it would be impolite for this official to refuse that strand of imperial qi. Chapter 6:11. In the Yong ancestral shrine, a golden dragon made of telekinesis coiled around a huge stone pillar. Compared to the golden dragon that Li Mu saw in the Great Zhou ancestral shrine, this dragon was slightly larger but not by much. It probably wouldn't be long before the Great Zhou's imperial aura matured. It had to be said that the Yong kingdom's ability to rule a country and win the hearts of the people was unique. Its territory was only a tenth of the Great Zhou's, and its population was far less than the Great Zhou's. However, the speed at which it condensed imperial aura far surpassed the Great Zhou's. Li Mu couldn't help but be curious about the strategy recorded in the Yong kingdom's heavenly tome. Unfortunately, the heavenly tome was still in the hands of the demon sect. Knowing that Linglong had already comprehended the heavenly tome, Xianming didn't give it to her. Therefore it was a 1-for-3 exchange. The demon sect had stolen 1 page of the heavenly tome from Yong, while Li Mu had stolen 3 pages from the demon sect. No matter how one looked at it, Li Mu didn't lose out. This time the demon sect had been bullied by Li Mu. If they had 10 pages of the heavenly tome, they could only obtain 1 page every 1,000 years. Li Mu had wasted 3,000 years of effort in a single month. When the 3 ancestors woke up from their tribulations and learned of this news, who knew how they would feel? From today onwards, all the factions related to Li Mu were on high alert. As soon as the transmission formation lit up, they would teleport to Yong without hesitation. Li Mu waited in the palace that the Yong imperial clan had arranged for him. Princess Linglong walked in from outside and said, Big brother Li, aren't you bored staying here? Why don't I take you to the palace? After all, this was his first time facing the might of an 8th realm expert. In order to wait for the arrival of the demon sect's 3 ancestors, Li Mu's nerves had been stretched taut. Hearing this, he didn't refuse and strolled around the Yong imperial palace with Princess Linglong. The two strolled around the imperial gardens before arriving at the front hall of the imperial palace. Coincidentally, it was noon at the moment. The officials of the various yamen left the yamen and headed to the food and beverage department for lunch. When they saw the two of them, they all stopped in their tracks and bowed. Greetings, Princess Linglong. Princess Linglong smiled and said, Thank you all for your hard work. Please go and have your meal. The officials cupped their hands and took their leave. One of them walked a few steps and looked back at Li Mu. After a moment of confusion, he suddenly exclaimed, Could this be Lord Li Mu? As soon as he said this, all the officials turned their heads and immediately caused a commotion. What? Lord Li, where's Lord Li? I've heard that Lord Li rescued the princess from the demon sect and is currently in our Yong. Could this person be? Facing the excited Yong officials, Li Mu cupped his fists and said, Nice to meet you, nice to meet you. As soon as Li Mu's voice fell, the atmosphere in the field immediately boiled. I've long heard of Lord Li's great name. Today I finally have the fortune to meet you. Lord Li, can you tell us in detail how you allied with the demon kingdom and the ghost realm? For thousands of years, only you have accomplished such a magnificent feat for the human race. I'm more interested in how Lord Li rescued Princess Linglong. This is like pulling a tooth from the tiger's mouth. It can be called a miracle. Li Mu was escorted to the food and beverage department by the enthusiastic Yong officials and had lunch with them. The imperial kitchen of Yong was not solely responsible for cooking for the imperial family. It was also responsible for the 3 meals a day for the officials. The Yong court had even established a food and beverage department for this purpose. The food and beverage department had famous chefs from all over the country who specialized in the local cuisines of each region. This allowed the officials, regardless of where they came from, to eat their own local cuisine in the palace. With regards to this point, Li Mu planned to imitate the Yong court when he returned. Only by treating the officials well could he increase their efficiency and enthusiasm in their work. Moreover, hiring a few chefs did not require a lot of investment, but it could bring unexpected benefits. Lord Li, I've heard that the Empress of the Great Zhou, the Queen of the Myriad Demons, and the Ghost Lord of the Ghost Realm are all your lovers. Lord Li is truly worthy of being our role model. Whenever Lord Li plans to attack Xuanzong, we will support you in seeking justice. Lord Li, tell us, how did you escape from the clutches of so many demonic Dao experts? Li Mu had never imagined that his largest fan club would be in the Yong court. Many officials in the Great Zhou feared him and avoided him like the plague. When the Yong court officials, especially the younger ones, saw him, they were like fans meeting their idol. Among them, Linglong was the head fan club. As a qualified fan club leader, Linglong took the initiative to lead Li Mu away from the imperial palace when she saw that he was unable to bear the harassment of the younger officials. Walking on the streets of the Yong court, Li Mu felt as if he was taking a stroll in the divine capital. The citizens of the Yong kingdom were full of vigor, unlike the people Li Mu saw when he first came to Shindu. Most of them were lifeless, like walking corpses. The citizens of the Yong kingdom naturally had a lot of telekinesis. On the streets of the Yong court, children played with each other, cheerful laughter filling the air. As the elderly walked through the streets, people took the initiative to support them. Li Mu even saw nursing homes and orphanages. Linglong told him that the court would take care of the elderly and children who had lost their families. The money and resources needed to settle them would come from the national treasury. Coupled with donations from the outside world, there would not be a situation where the elderly and children were left without a home. In addition, the court would allocate funds every year for the impoverished commoners who found it difficult to continue living, providing them with the bare minimum of living expenses. In the Yong court, if the commoners fell ill, they would not have to spend too much. The court would cover the majority of their medical expenses. Li Mu's various experiences in the state of Yong made him realize that he and the Empress had done many important things over the years, but they had neglected these trivial matters. These were the matters closest to the lives of the common people and were also the matters that the common people were most concerned about. It was no wonder that the people of the Yong court were so united. People did not only care about their relatives but also their children. The elderly had their parents, the strong had their uses, and the young had their strengths. The poor, widowed, lonely, alone, disabled, and ill were all taken care of. While most of the countries on the continent were still in the feudal era, the Yong court was already moving towards a harmonious society. After thinking it over, Li Mu asked, "Therefore the trade between the Yong court and the Great Zhou court is actually for the sake of the commoners. Is this the way of governing a country described in the Heavenly Book?" Linglong nodded. 100 years ago, the old ancestor obtained a page of the Heavenly Book by chance and slowly comprehended these ways of governing a country. Only then did the Yong court its current state. A single page of the Heavenly Book was enough to pass down a top-notch sect. The Yong court had 3 transcendents and several Dongxian experts. In fact, they were not inferior to the Taoist sections. It was not an exaggeration to view them as a sect disguised as a government. If the news of the Heavenly Book had not been leaked, the Yong court would have relied on the willpower of tens of millions of citizens to grow into one of the top powers on the continent in a few decades or 100 years. After all, in terms of willpower, the Great Zhou could not compare to the Yong court. Accompanied by Linglong, Li Mu toured the Yong court for a day. Many insights emerged in his mind. Aside from the dark clouds of the demonic Tao that still shrouded the continent, the Great Zhou's internal and external troubles had basically been quelled. It was time to consider improving the welfare of the commoners and better gather the willpower of the people. The Great Zhou's commoners outnumbered the Yong court by more than 10 times. If their average willpower was at the Yong court's level, wouldn't they be able to condense a strand of imperial aura every year? Of course, the difficulty of governing such a large country was incomparable to that of the Yong court. However, if some changes were made to the commoners, the speed at which imperial aura was condensed would increase several-fold. When night fell, Li Mu and Linglong returned to the imperial palace. The various regions of the Yong court were still peaceful. Li Mu was somewhat puzzled. The demonic Tao's 3 ancestors had already finished their tribulations. When they learned that the 3 pages of the Heavenly Book had been stolen, they would definitely be furious. However, regardless of whether it was the Yong court or the Great Zhou, there was no news of them. The demonic Tao had only accumulated a few pages of the Heavenly Book for several thousand years. Now that Li Mu had stolen 3 pages, it was unlikely that they would suffer such a loss. However, it was fine if he did not come. As long as the 3 ancestors did not take action, the world would be peaceful and stable. The pressure in Li Mu's heart was swept away. Deep into the night, the Yong court was quiet. At the same time, in the depths of the southern sea, endless roars could be heard from the towering waves. Divine Predictor, you have repeatedly obstructed me. One day I will flatten your Xuanzong. Chapter 6:12. Li Mu originally thought that after the demon sect's 3 ancestors woke up, they would immediately take revenge on him and Yong and snatch back the heavenly tomes. Unexpectedly, he had stayed in the Yong kingdom for half a month without seeing any signs of activity. Neither the demon sect's 3 ancestors nor Xianming had any intention of snatching back the heavenly tomes. Li Mu's numerous long-distance teleportation formations seemed to have been built in vain. At this moment, Li Mu suddenly recalled that Pei Yi had once said that the 3 ancestors could not easily set foot on the continent. Although Li Mu didn't know the reason behind this, since the Devil Sect didn't plan on attacking Yong, there was no need for Li Mu to remain here. The reason why he had stayed in Yong for so long was to learn how to govern Yong. The Great Zhou's internal problems had been resolved, and its external troubles had been quelled. What was needed now was peaceful development. In this aspect he needed to learn from Yong. In the Yong Imperial Palace, Li Mu extended his hand to Linglong and said, "Let's go." This time he wanted to bring Princess Linglong back to the divine capital. Firstly, her heart of 7 orifices was extremely attractive to the demonic Tao. If she remained in Yong, Yong would not be able to protect her. In addition, Linglong had taken the initiative to follow Li Mu to the divine capital. She felt deeply guilty for torturing Li Mu every day on the demonic island. Although it was an act, she had really done it. She had taken the initiative to follow Li Mu to atone for her sins. Li Mu had emphasized to her many times that it was only a temporary measure in times of danger. However, Princess Linglong seemed to have accepted this stubbornly. Since he was going to take her with him anyway, Li Mu let her be. Aside from protecting her, Li Mu actually had a small selfish motive. Although the heavenly tomes of Yong had been snatched away by the demonic Tao, Linglong was a walking heavenly tomes. If he brought her to the divine capital and had her help the Great Zhou implement a series of reforms, wouldn't he and the Empress be liberated? As the group watched the two disappear, the Yong Emperor suddenly realized something and muttered, "Oh no, we fell into a trap." Great Zhou Shin Du. According to past practice, whenever Lord Li Mu disappeared for a period of time, it meant that he was planning something big. The Great Zhou, the Yao Nation, and the Ghost Realm had formed an alliance during his absence. This time, news of Lord Li barging into the demon sect's lair alone and rescuing Princess Linglong from Yong under the noses of many demon sect experts spread from Yong to Shindu. Even if the people were already used to his actions, they still couldn't help but sigh in their hearts when they heard about this. Lord Li was forever a god. Ever since he stepped into the divine capital, all the things he did were things that others couldn't do, things that others didn't dare to do, and things that others didn't even dare to do. Even the people he chose to date were like this. In the entire Great Zhou, he was probably the only one who dared to flirt with the Empress. At this moment, in the Chang'e Palace, Li Mu was preparing to report to the Empress. Zhou Yi sensed that Li Mu had returned and was originally overjoyed. However, in the next moment, he sensed the aura of an unfamiliar woman beside him. Seeing Li Mu and a young woman walk in, the Empress only shot him a glance and didn't say anything. Li Mu understood the Empress so well that he knew what she was thinking with just a glance. Unhurriedly he introduced, "Your Majesty, this is Princess Linglong of Yong. She possesses the heart of 7 orifices and is one of the important targets of the demon sect. In order to protect her and prevent her from being abducted by the demon sect again, this subject acted on his own initiative and brought her back." Princess Linglong's eyes were filled with stars as she looked at the Empress. She hurriedly bowed and said, "Linglong greets Your Majesty the Empress." Zhou Yi felt uncomfortable under Princess Linglong's gaze. He lightly coughed and said, "Dispense with the formalities. Ali, arrange a palace for Princess Linglong to live in." According to etiquette, the envoys or nobles of other countries should be placed in the Chamberlain of Dependencies. They had never been placed in the palace. Li Mu opened his mouth and said, "Your Majesty, isn't it a little inappropriate to have Linglong live in the palace?" Zhou Yi indifferently glanced at him and asked, "Then where do you think is appropriate for her to live? The Li residence?" Li Mu decisively shut his mouth. Ali and Mr. Mei went to tidy up the palace for Linglong. The Empress walked outside the Chang'e Palace and pretended to be admiring the scenery. She indifferently said to Li Mu, "Her name wasn't on that paper." Li Mu helplessly said, "Your Majesty, what are you thinking? I only brought her back to protect her. At the same time, I also want her to help the Great Zhou implement some reforms that affect the people's lives." Also, she is an admirer of your majesty. Zhou Yi was diverted by Li Mu's change of topic. He asked, what does she admire about me? Li Mu said, your majesty is young, but you are already one of the most powerful people in the Zhou continent. You control the most powerful empire in the Zhou continent. You are the idol of countless women, including Linglong. She has told me more than once about her admiration for your majesty. At the entrance of another palace, Princess Linglong looked at Li Mu and the Empress standing side by side not far away. She was full of joy and said, Big Brother Li and your majesty are a perfect match. Seeing them together makes me happy. Mr. Mei was puzzled and asked, your majesty and Li Mu are together. What makes you happy? Princess Linglong said, I don't know. In any case, I'm just happy. Zhou Yi glanced at Linglong from the corner of her eyes and asked Li Mu, what's there to be happy about? Li Mu explained, your majesty might not understand, but when she admires the two of us at the same time, she would very much want to see us together. Aren't the people of the divine capital like this? Your majesty also knows the people's cries for us. Zhou Yi understood Li Mu's explanation. Countless people of the divine capital hoped that she would make Li Mu empress. She didn't expect that there would also be such a person in the distant Yong kingdom. At this moment, Zhou Qiong suddenly didn't care so much about the fact that Li Mu had brought back a beautiful woman. She glanced at Li Mu and said, follow me. Li Mu followed behind the empress and soon arrived in front of the ancestral shrine. The empress entered the ancestral shrine, and Li Mu followed her in. Inside the ancestral shrine, 36 cauldrons of psychokinesis shone with an abnormally resplendent golden light. The golden threads extending from each cauldron were at least twice as thick as the ones Li Mu had seen last time. Li Mu was astonished for a moment, but he soon understood. The great Zhou of today was no longer the great Zhou of the past. After Li Mu helped Su He unify the Ghost Realm and establish a peace treaty with the great Zhou, the Zhou continent's situation had completely changed. Apart from the demon sect, which the common people couldn't come into contact with, the great Zhou's internal and external troubles had been resolved. The common people could completely relax and live in peace and contentment. This was the best time that the Zhou continent had experienced in the past several thousand years. And the great Zhou was destined to be the dynasty that the common people trusted the most and recognized the most. When the common people trusted the country and were proud of the people of the country, the psychokinesis of the people would naturally reach a peak. Within the large cauldron in the center of the ancestral shrine, the psychokinesis dragon was napping. Its body was abnormally thick and solid, not inferior to the one given to him by the young emperor. This meant that the psychokinesis spirit within the ancestral shrine of the great Zhou had matured. Li Mu recalled this matter and said to the empress, there is one more thing that this subject forgot to tell your majesty. In order to thank this subject, the young emperor gave this subject a valuable gift. Zhou Yi looked at him and asked suspiciously, he wants to marry his daughter to you? Li Mu was speechless. What is your majesty thinking? He gave this subject a strand of emperor's qi. Li Mu extended his hand, and another golden dragon flew out from the cauldron. The moment this dragon appeared in the ancestral shrine, the enormous dragon within the cauldron opened its eyes. 2 rays of golden light flashed as it looked at Li Mu. To be exact, it was looking at the other golden dragon beside him. The golden dragon released by Li Mu paused for a moment before letting out a roar and flying towards the golden dragon in the cauldron. The 2 dragons instantly intertwined with each other, biting each other with their dragon heads. Chapter 613. Li Mu didn't expect that the 2 golden dragons would fight and devour each other as soon as they met. It was only then that he realized that the Emperor Qi was the spirit of telekinesis. They were formed from telekinesis. Whenever 2 spirits of Emperor Qi met, they would devour each other to strengthen themselves. This was an instinct of telekinesis spirits. Li Mu and the Empress wanted to stop them, but it was too late. The 2 bodies of Emperor Qi had already merged together, and there was no distinction between them. Only the heads were still biting and devouring each other. Later they even plunged into the cauldron. The cauldron at the center of the ancestral temple shook violently. Soon, a deafening dragon roar came from within. A blinding golden light shot out from the cauldron. It passed through the roof of the ancestral temple and tried to escape into the depths of the clouds. The Empress reached out and clenched her hand. An invisible hand seemed to appear in the void and captured the golden light. In the next moment, the telekinesis spirit in the ancestral temple showed its original form again. The golden light on its body was even more dazzling. Its body was also thicker than before. However, only one of the original 2 golden dragons was left. It was obvious that one of them had been devoured by the other. Li Mu and the Empress had already discussed who the Emperor Qi belonged to. The Empress had already refined a strand of Emperor Qi, so a new one was useless to her. Li Mu had his own telekinesis cultivation, so he didn't need the Emperor Qi to break through to the next level. The first strand of Emperor Qi in the ancestral temple was originally prepared for Lu Hanyan. A few years later, the second strand of Emperor Qi was left for Li Qin. After Linglong's father gave Li Mu a strand of Emperor's Qi, there was no need for them to split it evenly. Now that one strand of Emperor's Qi had been devoured, there was only one left. Who should he give it to? Moreover, after the two strands of Emperor Qi merged, a new telekinesis spirit was born. It was twice as strong as before. With their current cultivation, they couldn't bear the impact of such a huge telekinesis. The Empress saw this and said, "It seems that only you can refine this strand of Emperor Qi." Li Mu thought for a while and nodded. In the past, he did not consider refining it himself because he would reach the seventh realm sooner or later. He did not want to waste a strand of Emperor's Qi. The sooner the people around him reached the Transcendence realm, the sooner he could rest assured. However, his experiences during this period of time made Li Mu gradually realize that his cultivation was still not enough. Now that he was at the sixth realm, his previous enemies were no longer a threat to him. However, new enemies were constantly appearing. Not to mention the three ancestors of the demonic Tao and Tianjizi, even a peak transcendent expert like Shen Ming could only run away if he saw them. He needed to at least reach the seventh level transcendent realm in order to have the confidence to stand on this continent. The time it would take to refine the Emperor Qi was uncertain. It could take months or years. This strand of Emperor Qi was far more powerful than ordinary mature Emperor Qi, so it could take even longer. Before he went into seclusion to refine the Emperor Qi, he had to arrange everything around him. Li Mu left the palace. When he returned home, the people of the divine capital were still discussing the dragon roar that came from the palace, as well as the golden light that shot into the sky. In a certain mansion of the Shao clan, several members of the Shao clan reluctantly looked away from the palace. King Ping's expression was solemn as he said in a deep voice, "The Emperor Qi has formed." It had only been a few years since the last strand of Emperor Qi was formed. This was the fastest strand of Emperor Qi to form since the establishment of the Great Zhou. It should have been something to be happy about, but the Shao clan could not bring themselves to be happy. This was because the Emperor Qi in the Shao clan's ancestral temple no longer belonged to them. As they gradually moved away from the center of power in the Great Zhou, they had long lost their former glory. At the same time, a few sighs came from the Zhou mansion. 3 days later at Mount Baiyun. In the ancestral court of Fulu School, Xian Jizi looked at Li Mu with some doubt and asked, "Junior brother, what's the matter that requires you to invite all the Grand Supreme Elders of our 5 sects to the sect?" Li Mu was about to go into seclusion to refine the Emperor Qi. He did not know how long it would take for him to come out of seclusion. Before he went into seclusion, there was still an important matter to take care of. The 2 Grand Supreme Elders of Fulu School were nearing the end of their lifespans. The Grand Supreme Elders of the other 4 sects were not much better off than them. Before he went into seclusion, Li Mu planned to use the Great Sky Stealing Formation to extend their lifespans. Although they might not be able to reach the 8th level as long as they were alive, there would be endless possibilities. Spirit Array Sect. The sect master of Spirit Array Sect had just received a voice transmission from Xian Jizi. He asked, "What's the matter that requires the Grand Supreme Elders to go to Mount Baiyun? Can it be a few days later?" The Grand Supreme Elder just went into seclusion yesterday. In the voice transmission artifact, Xian Jizi said faintly, "Junior brother Ling Jizi obtained a lifespan extension technique from the demonic Tao. It can extend the Grand Supreme Elder's lifespans by 60 years. Since Martial Uncle is in seclusion, let's do it next time." The sect master of Spirit Array Sect was stunned for a moment, then immediately said, "No need, no need. When will he go into seclusion again? I'll go call him now." A heavenly fate talisman that could extend the lifespan of a transcendent expert by 3 to 5 years was a priceless treasure. What was the concept of extending one's lifespan by one 60-year cycle? It wasn't extending one's lifespan, but rather an opportunity and a possibility. Even if the Prime Elder was in secluded meditation, the headmaster would still call him out. Not long after, 2 streams of light flew out of the ancestral court of Spirit Array Sect and headed north. The speed of the light was unbelievably fast. Some of the elders of Spirit Array Sect looked at the sky with shock in their eyes. They muttered, "This speed, the Grand Supreme Elder's cultivation has improved again." In a quarter of an hour, 2 streams of light each from Spirit Array Sect, Pill Cauldron Sect and South Sect and North Sect flew towards Mount Baiyun at the maximum speed of the 7th realm. A day later. On the plaza of the main peak of Mount Baiyun, a huge formation had been set up. Apart from Xuanzong, 10 Grand Supreme Elders of the 6 Taoist sects sat cross-legged in the formation. Their eyes were filled with excitement and anticipation. Each formation could extend the lifespan of 10 people at most, which was the number of Grand Supreme Elders of the 5 sects. Li Mu originally wanted his nominal master, Fu Daozi, to come along. However, he was in seclusion to comprehend the Fulu Great Tao. If he forcefully broke through, all his previous efforts would be wasted. If he did not come out before the end of his life, Li Mu would have no choice but to forcefully wake him up. Under everyone's gaze, Li Mu struck a spell into the formation. The entire formation flickered with white light. The spiritual energy of several mountains of supreme-grade spiritual jades that were set up at the key positions of the formation was instantly depleted and turned into dust. Li Mu's attention was completely focused on the formation. The supreme-grade spiritual jades required for this formation had almost emptied the 5 sects' assets. If it failed, they would not be able to set it up again in a short period of time. Fortunately, the next scene did not disappoint Li Mu. Above their heads, a dense whirlpool gradually appeared. Strands of unknown energy were attracted from the other side of the whirlpool and drilled into the bodies of the people in the formation. In the next moment, a magical scene appeared. The Grand Supreme Elders' white hair gradually turned black. The frowns on their faces lessened and the spots disappeared. The lethargy and death aura on their bodies also gradually disappeared. Outside the formation, everyone's breathing began to become heavy. How could any cultivator resist the temptation of having an extra 60 years of lifespan? Everyone's attention was on the Grand Supreme Elders. Only Li Mu's gaze was fixed on the slowly disappearing spatial vortex in the void. The energy that allowed the Grand Supreme Elders to reverse time was something he had never seen in the real world. It was like spiritual energy but much purer than spiritual energy. Moreover, no matter how pure the spiritual energy was, it did not have the effect of reversing time. Energy would not appear for no reason. Where did this mysterious energy come from? There had been demonic cultivators who had tried to find the answer to this question. Without exception, they had all died on the way. This vortex seemed calm, but it contained an endless and violent spatial power. Whether it was the physical body or the primordial spirit, once touched, it would immediately be crushed and devoured. Not even a trace of residue would be left. Not long after, the spiritual energy was exhausted. The spatial vortex above the formation slowly dissipated. The void returned to calmness as if nothing had happened. However, the 10 Grand Supreme Elders sitting cross-legged in the square had undergone a great change. Although they had not recovered to their prime, they were no longer old men with one foot in the grave. Most of the wrinkles on their faces had disappeared, and their hair had turned black. Their laughter, full of energy, echoed throughout the main peak. Chapter 6:14. Feeling the new vitality in their bodies, the 2 Grand Supreme Elders of Fu School felt extremely complicated. 2 years ago, they had a premonition that the end of their lives was near. They had planned to pass on their cultivation to the disciples of the school and make one last contribution to the school before they died, passing on their lifetime's cultivation and comprehension. If Li Mu had not advised them at that time, they would not be where they were today. At the same time, they felt pity for the ancestors of the school who had died because of the end of their lifespans. If Li Mu had been there at that time, they would not have had to sacrifice themselves. The 2 of them looked at Li Mu, their eyes filled with gratification. These old fellows had already been surpassed by the younger generation of the school. But this was a good thing. The future of Fu School rested on his shoulders. The other elders also looked at Li Mu, then cupped their hands together and said solemnly, "Many thanks, Martial Nephew." He had helped them extend their lifespans by 60 years. This was a debt that could not be repaid. In addition to the debt of deciphering the heavenly tomes, they had unknowingly owed Fu School so much. Li Mu smiled at the crowd and said, "We're all family. Martial uncles, there's no need to be so polite." Xian Jizi also smiled and said, "I've already had the disciples prepare a banquet in the main hall to congratulate martial uncles. Martial uncles, please come." After the banquet, the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects did not leave. Instead, they stayed on Mount Baiyun and discussed the Tao with each other. Every few days they would give lectures on the Tao at the various peaks. Any disciple of Fu School could go and listen according to their interests. Some cultivators who came to Mount Baiyun to buy Fu could also listen if they wanted to. Although Fu School also had experts in the Tao of pills, formations, artifact forging and body refining, their attainments could not compare to the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sections. Originally, the top experts of the various sects would only give lectures during the Taoist conference. At that time, the various sects would at most send experts at the level of first seat. The Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects would personally give lectures. This was a treatment that even Xuanzong had never received. Unknowingly, Fulu School had replaced Xuanzong as the invisible leader of Taoism. Once the news of the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects preaching at Mount Baiyun spread, countless cultivators flocked to Mount Baiyun. It was an unprecedented event. The news quickly spread to Xuanzong. Ever since Li Mu had caused a ruckus at the exchange meeting, Xuanzong's situation had deteriorated day by day. Great Zhou did not allow Xuanzong to open a training ground in the country. Without a training ground, it would be very difficult to recruit new disciples, and the sect would not have fresh blood flowing in. A huge market had been built outside of Luoyang. Because of its unique geographical advantage and the unconditional support of various sects, almost 90% of Xuanzong's business was taken away. A month ago, Xuanzong's market had been closed. Not only that, but in such a short time Xuanzong had gone from being the #1 sect of Taoism that everyone envied to being hated by humans and demons. Now, not only the Yao Kingdom, but even the Ghost Realm had forbidden Xuanzong disciples from entering. Before offending Li Mu, no one had thought that things would turn out this way. No one had thought that he could make the Empress of Great Zhou, the Queen of Demons, and the Master of the Ghost Realm stand against Xuanzong. What did he rely on? Now, the Grand Supreme Elders of the various sects were preaching at Fulu School. This was tantamount to directly admitting that Fulu School was the true leader of Taoism. For the disciples of Xuanzong, this was something that was difficult to accept. In the past few days, many different voices had appeared within Xuanzong. More and more people were dissatisfied with Grand Supreme Elder Dao Chengzi's actions and demanded that Qing Chengzi be handed over to redeem Xuanzong's reputation. However, Grand Supreme Elder stubbornly insisted on having his own way. After severely punishing several elders who had opposed him, no one dared to bring up the matter again. On the surface, Mount Penglai appeared to be peaceful, but everyone knew that Xuanzong was no longer the Xuanzong of the past. In a Dao palace floating on the highest mountain peak, Dao Chengzi sat on the sect master's chair. Half of his hair was black and the other half was white. His entire person gave off an evil aura. The white-haired half of his face hesitated and said, "Let's hand over Qing Chengzi. This was our fault in the first place." The black-haired half of his face snorted coldly and said in a cold voice, "As long as Uncle Master is here, Xuanzong will still be the #1 sect in the world, even if the 5 sects join forces. When we step into the Dao integration stage, we will destroy the demon Dao and unite Taoism. That's not what I want." You never fight for what you want. Otherwise, the sect master's position would have been yours long ago. Listen to me from now on. Only I can lead Xuanzong to greatness again. In the main hall, the same voice alternated with different tones, making the atmosphere of the main hall particularly gloomy. On Baiyun Peak of Fulu School, Li Mu was enjoying his last moments of comfort before going into seclusion. He had already told Lu Hanyan and Li Qing that he was about to go into seclusion to refine the Emperor Qi. The 2 strands of Emperor Qi that he had prepared for them had swallowed each other and become one. It was no longer something that they could withstand. After receiving Ao Qing's inheritance, Li Mu's body was comparable to that of a dragon. Other than the Empress, he was the only one who could withstand this strengthened version of Emperor Qi. With the Empress's current cultivation, unless she had more than 10 strands of Emperor's Qi, her cultivation would not improve much if she only refined 1 or 2 strands. In comparison, Li Mu needed it more. Li Mu didn't choose Baiyun Peak as the location for his seclusion. Instead, he chose Shindu. He had been running around these days and didn't have time to improve his relationship with the Empress. Now, he had to go into seclusion for a long time. In that case, it was best to go into seclusion near the Empress. If he made her unhappy, Li Mu would suffer. Bringing Lu Hanyan, Li Qing, Wanwan and Xiaobai back to Shindu, Li Mu accompanied them for a few more days. Then he was about to go into seclusion. On the last night before he went into seclusion, he once again enjoyed the blessings of having multiple partners. In the morning, both sides were filled with warmth and fragrance. Lu Hanyan gently drew circles on his chest and asked, "How long will it take this time?" Li Mu thought for a moment and said, "Within a year." When the Empress refined the Emperor Qi, she took half a year. Phantom Princess had also been in seclusion for several months. They had only refined a normal strand of Emperor Qi. Li Mu's strengthened version of Emperor Qi should take longer to refine. In the Li residence, when the sun rose to the middle of the sky, Li Mu walked out of his room. He walked into the courtyard and touched Wanwan and Xiaobai's heads. He said, "Cultivate well and wait for me at home." After hugging them gently, Li Mu left the house and walked into the palace. The empress was already waiting for him in Changel Palace. Li Mu gave the Dao Bell and Sun Shooting bow to the empress and said, "Just in case, take these two magic treasures." Although her cultivation hadn't reached the 8th realm, she had the strongest defense and attack magic treasures. Even if the 3 patriarchs of the demonic way came, they couldn't do anything to her. He would be in seclusion in the underground palace behind Changel Palace. That was where the empress usually cultivated. Li Mu looked at the empress and said, "I'll go now." Zhou nodded and said, "Go." Li Mu turned around. Zhou suddenly said, "Wait." Li Mu turned around and asked, "Is there anything else, Your Majesty?" Zhou tiptoed and kissed him gently on the lips. She said, "Come out soon." At the entrance of Changel Palace, Linglong saw this scene and suddenly blushed. Mr. Mei glanced at her and asked, "Why are you blushing?" Princess Linglong clasped her hands together and said excitedly, "I don't know, but I'm just happy." Ridiculous? Lord Mei no longer paid any attention to her. When he looked at Shangguan Li, he was stunned and said in surprise, "Ali, why are you blushing too?" Chapter 6:15. Great Zhou Imperial Palace, Underground Palace. Li Mu sat cross-legged on the ground, watching the heavy stone door slowly close. The Empress, Li Exquisite, and the others also disappeared through the door. Beside him was a mountain of spiritual jade. With a thought, Li Mu summoned the image of a golden dragon. As soon as the dragon appeared, it tried to escape, but the underground palace was sealed off by an array. It could only scurry around in this space before it was bounced back by the array on the wall. After a series of collisions, it roared and charged into Li Mu's body. As the telekinesis spirit entered his body, Li Mu's body radiated golden light as dazzling as the sun. This energy was extremely violent, completely different from the gentle telekinesis he had absorbed in the past. Boundless telekinesis rampaged through his body, as if it wanted to destroy everything. Fortunately, Li Mu's body was comparable to that of the dragon race. After the baptism of the dragon marrow, this pain was nothing to him. Not long after, a golden cocoon formed on the outside of his body. The golden cocoon emitted a faint fluorescent light. The spiritual jade in the underground palace seemed to be attracted by something. The spiritual chi within slowly dissipated and was absorbed into the golden cocoon. The underground palace fell into a long silence. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. Half a year passed in the blink of an eye. In this half a year, the Zhou continent was peaceful. The people of the Great Zhou lived in peace and contentment. In the ancestral temple of the imperial palace, the new imperial chi had already taken shape. In the past, the imperial court would have needed more than 10 years to condense telekinesis. Now it only took the imperial court half a year. In this half a year, the imperial court issued many policies. The imperial court opened medical centers in the various counties and counties, reducing the majority of the people's medical expenses. At the same time, welfare homes and shelters were established in the various counties to support the elderly and orphans abandoned by their parents. Some people who lived in poverty and found it difficult to survive were also helped by the imperial court. The introduction of a series of policies benefiting the people made them trust the imperial court more and more. The unity of the people's hearts reached a peak since the founding of the Great Zhou. When the empress had just ascended the throne, there was a saying among the people that if a woman became empress, yin and yang would be reversed, and heaven and earth would be in rebellion. Now the common people could no longer hear such voices. The wise and mighty Her Majesty the Empress and official Li, who wholeheartedly served the people, were in perfect harmony. It was because of this that the people of the Great Zhou's 36 counties could live such good lives today. If anyone dared to criticize this, they would be drowned in the mouths of the people even without the imperial court taking action. Great Zhou's Shindu. The citizens of Shindu had not heard from Lord Li for half a year. After disappearing for half a year, the people did not forget about him. Everyone knew that they were living and working in peace now because there were countless people like Lord Li who were silently working for them in the dark. They did not know the names of these people, nor did they know their identities, but they definitely existed. They used their backbone to prop up the Great Zhou. On the streets of Fairy's capital, Wanwan and Xiao Bai each held a stick of candied hawthorn as they followed behind Lu Hanyan and Li Qin. Wanwan licked the icing on the surface and muttered, "Young master has been in seclusion for half a year. When will he come out?" Xiao Bai gently took a bite of the hawthorn and said, "Benefactor said that he will only come out in about a year." Wanwan sighed and said, "Then Miss will have to think about him for another half a year?" Lu Hanyan turned her head and glanced at her, saying, "I didn't." It was clearly you who was thinking about him. Wanwan said, then who was the one who called out young master's name in her dream last night and even touched and kissed me? Lu Hanyan glanced at Li Qing beside her and blushed. She quickly covered Wanwan's mouth and transmitted her voice, that was your dream. Wanwan's mouth was covered by Lu Hanyan. Xiao Bai hurriedly continued to eat her candied hawthorn. In her heart, she felt that it was nothing to dream about Benefactor. She also dreamed about Benefactor many times. Sometimes when she slept with Wanwan, she would also think of Wanwan as him. However, she would at most hug and not touch and kiss. Walking on the streets of Shindu, the girls suddenly lost the mood to shop and looked in the direction of the Imperial Palace at the same time. At this time in Chengel Palace, Zhong Ling was running around barefooted and playing with Cheng Xin. Princess Linglong was sitting where Li Mu was originally sitting. She replaced the Empress and focused on reading the memorials. Zhou Yi leaned on the dragon throne, her eyes lost. No one knew what she was thinking. Shang Guanli stood behind her, her eyes also unfocused. Mr. Mei stood behind Zhou Yi on the other side. He was bored and mumbled, it's been half a year. I wonder when Li Mu will come out of seclusion. Without Li Mu, the Imperial Palace was extremely quiet. In this half a year, the Empress and Ali's smiles had decreased. She also felt that everything was boring. The atmosphere in Chengel Palace was quiet and cold. Until a certain moment, a powerful aura suddenly appeared and rushed into the sky from underground. At this moment, Zhou Yi looked up. A long-lost smile finally appeared on her face. At the same time, all the people in Shindu felt their hearts suddenly palpitating. All the cultivators, no matter what they were doing, looked up immediately with shock. What a powerful aura. It seems like someone broke through. It's the aura of a breakthrough. Such a powerful aura. Is it a breakthrough to the 6th or 7th level? The aura coming from the Imperial Palace shook Shindu. The deans of the 4 academies also felt this aura immediately. 4 streaks of light flew into the sky and gathered together. An old man asked, it's him? Another middle-aged man said, it's him. A middle-aged scholar said, other than him, who else could it be? The 4 of them were familiar with this aura. When the Empress refined the Emperor aura and broke through, they had already seen it once. The difference was that this aura was even stronger than the Empress back then. Although most people didn't know, it wasn't a secret to them that the Empress had given the mature Emperor aura in the ancestral temple to Li Mu. As the deans of the 4 academies, one of their responsibilities was to protect the Emperor aura from outsiders. Logically speaking, even if the Empress didn't return the Emperor aura to the Xiao family, she should have passed it to the Great Zhou ancestral temple. However, when the Empress gave the Emperor aura to Li Mu, they didn't stop her. Firstly, the Great Zhou was where it was today because of the Empress and Li Mu. This Emperor aura was also nurtured and condensed by them. They had the right to decide what to do with it. Secondly, the Empress's strength had soared in the past 2 years. Even if the deans of the 4 academies worked together, they were still no match for her. Whether it was power or strength, she stood at the peak of the Great Zhou. Although Li Mu was a subject, he was only 1 title away from the Empress. It was indisputable that he had inherited the Emperor aura. The 4 of them looked at each other and flew to the Imperial Palace to congratulate her. The 4 deans were of noble status. They didn't need to announce their entry to the Imperial Palace. As soon as they entered Chengel Palace, they saw 2 figures hugging each other tightly. In an instant, their expressions became awkward. Although there were some things that everyone was well aware of, it was the first time they had seen it with their own eyes. When Zhou Qiong and Li Mu hugged each other, they were facing the door of the hall. Zhou Qiong raised her head and frowned. The 4 deans' hearts skipped a beat and they immediately retreated. Not long after, the Empress's voice came from inside the palace. Come in. The 4 of them walked into Chengel Palace again and saw the Empress sitting majestically on the dragon throne. A young figure stood in the palace. The 4 deans clasped their hands awkwardly and said, Congratulations, Lordly, congratulations, Your Majesty. Chapter 6:16. In the past, the 4 academies could suppress the imperial power. Now the 4 deans could only lower their heads before Li Mu and the Empress. The Empress' cultivation had reached the peak of transcendence. If she really fought, she wouldn't be weaker than Xianming. 1 strand of Emperor Qi could make a 5th realm cultivator reach the 7th realm. 2 strands of Emperor Qi not only allowed Li Mu to transcendence, but his spiritual power was also far stronger than normal 7th realm cultivators. Now if he met Xianming again, Li Mu could fight her without the sun shooting bow. The 4 deans were quickly sent away by the Empress. After not seeing each other for half a year, Zhou Yi wanted to find a quiet place to spend some time with Li Mu. However, she also knew that Li Mu didn't belong to her alone. She pretended not to care and said, "They should know that you're out. Go back first." Li Mu transmitted his voice, "Then I'll come find you later." Zhou nodded and said, "I'll wait for you here." The seventh realm's divine telekinesis was enormous. Li Mu's divine telekinesis scanned the area and found several familiar auras on the streets of the divine capital. He formed a seal with one hand and appeared on the streets of the divine capital with just a thought. Master. Savior. Wanwan and Xiaobai saw the figure that they'd been dreaming of for a long time suddenly appear beside them. However, they seemed to remember something and stopped in the air. They stood beside Li Qing and Lu Hanyan. Li Mu stepped forward and hugged them. He said softly, "Sorry for making you wait." A moment later, the family returned to the residence. Wanwan happily wanted to follow Li Mu into the inner courtyard, but Xiaobai grabbed her wrist. Wanwan quickly realized something. She sat down at the stone table in the courtyard and rested her chin on her hands. She mumbled, "Xiaobai, when do you think Master will realize that we've grown up?" Xiaobai giggled and said, "I'm not in a hurry. I'll be Savior's person sooner or later anyway." Wanwan rolled her eyes at him and said, "It's because you're not in a hurry that the other fox got ahead of you. You're such a disgrace to the little fox. You should be more careful in the future." After the wedding, this was the first time Li Mu had been separated from them for so long. Absence makes the heart grow fonder. What happened next was naturally something that Wanwan and Xiaobai had to avoid for the time being. Li Mu had obtained the dual cultivation technique from Ao Qing and the Demonic Path's Heavenly Book. Came in handy this time. His cultivation had already surpassed Lu Hanyan and Li Qing by a lot. The process of dual cultivation did not improve Li Mu's cultivation much, but it was greatly beneficial to them. Dual cultivation was essentially a fusion of yin and yang. If one was stronger and the other was weaker, it would be beneficial to the weaker party. If their strength was similar, both parties would benefit greatly from it. When he and the Empress reached that stage, perhaps the opportunity for them to reach the 8th level would lie in dual cultivation. Although the 8th level was not the end of cultivation, it was far too difficult to reach the 8th level in today's world where spirit chi was so scarce. The path of advancement through normal cultivation had almost been blocked, and there were no shortcuts like Emperor Chi to take. It could be considered the ceiling of all cultivators. Dual cultivation was different from the matter between men and women. They had to guide yin and yang chi to circulate in their bodies at all times, which was extremely taxing on their divine senses. In less than 4 hours, the two women's divine senses were exhausted and they fell into a deep sleep. Li Mu's divine sense was much stronger than theirs, so he did not feel much fatigue. No wonder Ao Qing had been merciful all those years ago. He majored in dual cultivation. Two companions could not satisfy him at all, nor could they support his cultivation. After covering them with blankets, Li Mu's figure appeared in Chang'an Palace not long after. Mr. Mei, Ali, Qing Xan, Ling Long, and even Zhong Ling were not here. Only the Empress sat on the dragon throne, absent-mindedly reading a book. The moment Li Mu appeared in the palace, a smile appeared at the corner of her mouth. Li Mu took a step and was already by her side. Holding her slender waist, he bent down and kissed her. This was his first forceful kiss to the Empress. Before Li Mu went into seclusion, other than the Empress taking the initiative to kiss him, Li Mu almost never had the chance to kiss her. The main reason was that she was too strong. Li Mu could be forcefully kissed, but it was impossible for him to forcefully kiss her. Now, Li Mu was finally at the same level as her. The situation of women being stronger than men was finally going to change. He had waited for this day for a long time. Zhou Yi immediately understood Li Mu's thoughts. She reached out 2 fingers and pressed them against Li Mu's lips. Snorting, she said, "You think you can suppress me just because you're at the 7th level?" Having been seen through, Li Mu said guiltily, "I didn't mean that." Zhou Yi stood up and said, "Good. I also want to know how much you've improved in the past 6 months." Li Mu rubbed his hands and said eagerly, "That's not good." The strength of the Empress had once caused him to dream that their identities had been reversed. If he could really defeat the Empress, the shameful history of him lying in the Empress's arms in his dreams would completely become a thing of the past. Not long after, in the 9-heaven squall above the divine capital, 2 indistinguishable figures were entangled in the 9-heaven squall. The light of spells blossomed into brilliant fireworks in the sky. However, it was daytime now, so the commoners couldn't detect it. The cultivators with high cultivation in the divine capital could feel the waves of mana coming from above. Some people flew up to investigate curiously, but when they got close to the 9-heaven squall, they flew back down dejectedly. The 9-heaven squall above could not only destroy the physical body, but also injure the primordial spirit. It was a forbidden area for cultivators. Those who could fight in the Nine Heavens Squall were all elites among elites. Just the aftershocks of a battle of that level could destroy their bodies and souls. First, there was a mysterious elite breaking through, and then there was a battle between top elites in the Nine Heavens Squall. This aroused endless suspicion in the hearts of the cultivators in the divine capital. At this moment, above the divine capital, on a white cloud, Li Mu was pinned down by the Empress. All his mana was sealed. He could only beg for mercy. Your Majesty, I admit defeat. I admit defeat. Reality proved that after breaking through to the seventh realm, Li Mu was still overconfident. Relying on his many Taoist techniques and rich battle experience, he even dared to fight the 5 patriarchs of the demonic way. Then he was taught a lesson by the Empress. There was no distinction between him and the Empress. Apart from not telling her his background, the Empress also knew the remarkable Taoist techniques that he knew. Fighting with the Empress, Li Mu could not gain any advantage at all. While his transcendence energy far exceeded that of a newly ascended 7th level cultivator, there was still a considerable gap between him and the Empress. From the very beginning, he had been firmly suppressed by the Empress. Now even his body was being pressed beneath her. Facing the Empress, he could not take out the sun-shooting bow, so he could only admit defeat. Zhou looked down at him and said indifferently, "If you want to suppress me, wait until your cultivation surpasses mine." With that, she leaned down and kissed him domineeringly. Walking on the streets of the divine capital, Li Mu sighed softly. That dream of his would probably last for a while longer. The Empress was different from others. She was a woman and also an Empress. She was unwilling to be under anyone at any time, even if that person was Li Mu. If there was a forced kiss between them, then the one who had the strength to take the initiative would definitely be her. On the way back to the Li residence, Li Mu passed by a street corner. Suddenly he felt something and looked ahead. There was a flag erected at the corner of the street with the words, "Divine Strategy and Wondrous Calculation" written on it. A sloppy Taoist priest sat behind the flag, leaning against the wall and looking listlessly at the pedestrians on the street. Compared to when he first met the sloppy Taoist priest, the current him was filled with a thick aura of lethargy. More of his hair was white and brown spots appeared on his face. This was a sign that his lifespan was reaching its end. Looking at the sloppy Taoist priest, Li Mu could not help but sigh in his heart. When he first met the sloppy Taoist priest, he was only a mortal. If it were not for his reminder, Li Mu would probably have died from the scattering of his 7 souls. Later, Li Mu recruited him into the Department of Worship and gave him a talisman of divine secrets, which allowed him to temporarily extend his lifespan. But now, it seemed that he would not be able to break through before his lifespan ended. On the other hand, Li Mu had already broken through before him. Sometimes, the path of cultivation was just this cruel. At the corner of the wall, the scruffy old Taoist priest sensed something and looked ahead, catching sight of a familiar figure. Seeing Li Mu again, he subconsciously wanted to check his cultivation. But when he used his spying ability, all he could see was a cloud of fog. Shocked, he even jumped up from the ground and said with a trembling voice, You. Chapter 6:17. On the street corner of the divine capital, the slovenly Taoist priest stared at Li Mu as if he had seen a ghost. The first time he met Li Mu, he was just a mortal who had lost his 7 souls. At that time, he was already at the peak of the 6th realm and was seeking an opportunity to transcend. He kindly reminded him. The second time they met, Li Mu had already stepped onto the path of cultivation. After that, every time he met Li Mu, his cultivation would become stronger. Until this time, even he could not see through Li Mu's cultivation. There were generally 2 reasons for such a situation. First, Li Mu had a magic treasure that could hide his aura and cultivation. Second, Li Mu's cultivation had already surpassed his. He subconsciously thought that it was the former. However, the feeling that Li Mu gave him was not the former. At this moment, when he faced Li Mu, he even felt like he was facing the Empress of the Great Zhou. The slovenly Taoist priest stared at Li Mu and said in shock, You have already transcended. Li Mu did not know how to answer this question. The main reason was that reality was too cruel for the slovenly Taoist priest. If it was Li Mu, a mortal that he would not even look at a few years ago, had already surpassed him in cultivation, he would feel somewhat disappointed. Li Mu could say, "It's just luck. So the person who broke through in the imperial palace was you." The slovenly Taoist priest had a complicated expression on his face. After a long silence, he slowly said, "You don't need to comfort me. I have lived for more than 2 decades. I have lived enough. I can't wait to be free." Li Mu looked at him and gently shook his head. He said, I obtained a life-extending technique from the demon sect. It can extend a person's life for another 60 years. Before he could finish, the Taoist priest looked at him in shock and asked, There's such a heaven-defying Tao technique? Li Mu nodded and said, Since we are fated to meet again today, I originally wanted to repay Senior's kindness in the past, but I didn't expect that Senior had already seen through life and death and wanted to be free as soon as possible. Since that is the case, then forget it. The slovenly Taoist priest hurriedly stepped forward and said, Don't, I'm just saying. Who doesn't want to live a few more years? Don't forget I saved your life. Li Mu did not forget about this. Even though he had used a heavenly fortune talisman to settle the debt between them, the debt of saving his life was immeasurable. The grand elders of the various sects had already extended their lives once. Next up would be people like the slovenly Taoist priest, who were nearing the end of their lives but were still stuck at the peak of Dongxian, unable to reach the 7th realm. Compared to the grand elders of the 7th realm, the grand elders were only at the 6th realm, so they used less energy to open the formation. It didn't matter if the slovenly Taoist priest was there or not. Li Mu chuckled. He looked at the slovenly Taoist priest and said, Go to Mount Baiyun and wait for me there. Watching Li Mu leave, the slovenly Taoist priest stroked his snow-white beard. Several years ago, when he was comprehending the great Tao on the streets of Yangqiu County, he had never imagined that his impulsive reminder would be rewarded so richly today. In the past he had helped Li Mu. Today Li Mu had helped him. The cycle of karma was wondrous. Half a month later, Li Mu temporarily bid farewell to the Empress. He brought Lu Hanyan and Li Qing back to Mount Baiyun. At this time, the slovenly Taoist priest had already become a guest elder of the Fulu school. According to Xian Jizi, he had asked for it. The slovenly Taoist priest's strength was only below the 7th realm of the sect. Xian Jizi did not refuse such a person who was willing to join the Fulu school, and because of his relationship with Li Mu. Within the Talisman Puppet sect, Violet Cloud Peak's Yu Quanzi only had 10 years of lifespan left. Li Mu asked Xian Jizi to inform the other 4 sects, asking them to choose 2 first seats with the shortest lifespan. Once again they set up a grand formation to help them extend their lifespan by 60 years. In this way, the grand elders of the 5 Taoist sects would not be affected by their lifespans for the next few decades. On the main peak of Mount Baiyun, Xian Jizi looked at Li Mu and stroked the short beard on his chin. He said, Since junior brother has successfully transcended, it is time for senior brother to give up the position of head teacher. Li Mu waved his hand and said, Senior brother, you should sit on the position of head teacher for now. I'm used to being free and undisciplined. I am temporarily unable to bear the heavy responsibility of being head teacher. Although he shouldered the heavy responsibility of revitalizing the sect and had been in charge of all matters of the Fulu school, in reality, he was no different from the head teacher. However, on the surface, the Fulu school still needed Xian Jizi to act as the face. After all, Xian Jizi's image was that of an immortal Taoist senior. He was not like Li Mu, who had no other good points other than his good looks. Although Xian Jizi was helpless, he did not raise any objections. On the surface he was still the head teacher of the Fulu school, but in reality, Li Mu was the one in charge. As a disciple of the Fulu school, he could only obey Li Mu's arrangements. After arranging the matters of Mount Baiyun, Li Mu went to the Yao Nation. A month before he came out of seclusion, Phantom Princess had already come out. Now she was a 7-tailed fox and was the true queen of the demons. The 4 great tribes of the Yao Nation had already completed the incorporation of the demon clans. Since the White Emperor, the Yao Nation, which had been in chaos for 3,000 years, was once again unified. For some reason, both Phantom Princess and the Empress wanted to conquer Li Mu in terms of strength. After half a year, this was the first time he met Phantom Princess. The 2 of them did not linger and reminisce about old times. Instead, they engaged in a battle under Phantom Princess's request. Although Li Mu was helpless, he could only agree. There was no doubt about the result. They both advanced to the 7th level. Phantom Princess only refined 1 spirit of telekinesis, while Li Mu refined 2. The difference between her and Li Mu in terms of spiritual power was like the difference between Li Mu and the Empress. However, Li Mu's attitude towards Phantom Princess was different from the Empress. In terms of strength, Li Mu had never conquered the Empress. All along he had been the one being conquered. Therefore he was very eager to conquer the Empress once. Whether it was strength, intelligence or other aspects, he had already conquered Phantom Princess countless times. He did not have any desire to win against her. In order to take care of her emotions, Li Mu tied with her. Phantom Princess said with some dissatisfaction, I thought I could finally win against you this time, Why did you advance so quickly? Li Mu held her hand and asked, if I don't increase my cultivation, how can I protect you in the future? Phantom Princess only acted coquettishly in front of Li Mu. Then she asked expectantly, tell me between me and Zhou Yi who is stronger? She did not have a clear understanding of how strong the Empress was. That was why she asked such a question. Li Mu revealed an awkward but polite smile and said, she is she, you are you. You both have your strengths. Don't compare everything. Chapter 6:18. Li Mu had only stayed in the Yao nation for 3 days. Although the Queen of Demons was fragrant, the master of the ghost realm was not to be trifled with. If Su He knew that Li Mu had come out of seclusion but had not gone to find her, and was instead fooling around with Phantom Princess in the Yao nation, things would get serious. The more beauties around him, the more Li Mu wanted to be impartial. He could not let anyone feel that he was neglected. The ghost realm was shrouded in that strange fog and could not send messages directly. Unlike Phantom Princess and the Empress, who could contact Li Mu at any time, she still did not know that Li Mu had come out of seclusion. After leaving the Yao nation, Li Mu headed southwest. Fengdu City, which originally belonged to the Rakshasa king, was now the ghost capital of the ghost realm. It was the closest to the Great Zhou and the space there was the most stable. The teleportation formation of the ghost realm was built 200 miles outside of Fengdu City. Li Mu had wanted to build it directly in Fengdu City, but the space of the ghost realm had been shattered after the ancient war. It could not withstand the power of space. Once the teleportation was activated, it would be swept into the spacetime turbulence due to the collapse of space. Considering this reason, Li Mu built the teleportation formation at the edge of the ghost realm. 200 miles was not a long distance for the 7th realm Rakshasa king, King Yanluo, and the others. If one of them was in trouble, the ghost realm would only be delayed in providing support. Li Mu's current speed could not be compared to half a year ago. Soon, the fog-shrouded ghost realm appeared in front of him. He stopped shrinking Earth into an inch and turned into a stream of light, flying into the fog. At this time, the fog outside Fengdu City was abnormally tumbling. Ming Yi, Ming Air, and Ming San faced each other from a distance. Ming San looked at him and said in a low voice, we know that you were forced. This time the 5th ancestor came to save you. Get out of the way. Ming Yi's expression was complicated. If the 5th ancestor came to the ghost realm to save him, she would not have abandoned them when she was threatened by Li Mu's bow. Him coming here was nothing more than taking advantage of Li Mu's closed seclusion to obtain the ghost domain heavenly book. The past half a year in Ghost Realm was completely different from when he was on Ghost Island. When working under the 3rd and 5th Patriarchs, he had to be respectful at all times and carry out all kinds of dangerous missions. But here the Ghost Lord and Li Mu did not order him around. Although he did not get along well with the Rakshasa king and the other ghosts at first, they became friends as they interacted more often. Every few days they would get together for a drink. He had never had such a leisurely and comfortable experience before. Although he didn't say a word, he stood in front of Ming Air and Ming San and didn't retreat. A soul spear condensed in his hand and he pointed it at the two from afar. Seeing this, Bai asked angrily, Bai, have you betrayed Glory Sect? Ming San's expression also darkened. He said, don't talk nonsense with him. Capture him and hand him over to the 5th ancestor. As soon as he finished speaking, the two rushed toward Bai. The Yu and Ming elders' cultivations were about the same, so Bai was soon at a disadvantage. At this moment, a cloud of black fog flew over from afar, and Rakshasa King's voice came from the fog. Old ghost, don't be afraid. I'm here to help you. With Rakshasa King's help, the pressure on Ming Yi decreased, but Yanluo King, Yiksha King, and Azura King were a little flustered. The 5th ancestor of the demonic path came prepared this time. They knew the strength of Fengdu, and there were 6 7th realm cultivators with them, which was one more than them. In a battle of the same level, one more person could determine the outcome of the battle. The sky above Fengdu was covered by a huge black lotus. So he used the ghost controlling technique, but it was useless. With her current 6th realm cultivation, she could not participate in such a battle. Ming Yi and the 4 ghost kings were held back, while Xian Ming and another black-robed man suppressed the ghost servant. Xian Ming's strength was about the same as the ghost servant's, and the black-robed man's strength was not ordinary either. Even the powerful ghost servant was not a match for the two of them. He was injured several times and his aura kept weakening. At a certain moment, Xian Ming whispered to the black-robed man, "You hold him back." As soon as he finished speaking, he left the battle and flew toward Su He, who was standing on the city wall of Fengdu. The ghost servant's expression changed. He wanted to teleport over, but he was stopped by the black-robed man. Xianming had already locked onto Su He's aura. He reached out his pale and slender hand to grab Su He. Just as he was about to touch Su He, a fist appeared from the void. Boom. The fist and palm collided, and a huge wave of dermic power swept out. It was absorbed by the array on the city wall, but the ground outside the city caved in. A man's figure appeared in front of the woman on the city wall. Xianming's expression changed slightly. The dermic power in this fist was not weaker than hers. Moreover, from the fist just now, she felt that the opponent's physical body was not weaker than hers. Other than corpse cultivators and dragons, she had never met anyone with such a strong physical body. After seeing the person's face clearly, Xianming's expression changed drastically. She retreated quickly, but the person followed closely behind her like a shadow. Li Mu was in seclusion to refine the emperor's qi. This was not a secret in the sage sect. However, Xianming did not expect that he would succeed so quickly. With a level 7 cultivation and that terrifying sun-shooting bow, she was no longer Li Mu's opponent. Facing Li Mu's close approach, her fingernails grew rapidly. Like 10 sharp swords they stabbed toward Li Mu. For corpse cultivators, the most powerful thing was always their bodies. Xianming wanted to fight hand to hand, but Li Mu did not use any supernatural powers. Golden light flashed on his body. Golden light radiated from his arm and met Xianming's fingernails. Then a string of fire burst out in the void. Both of them retreated hundreds of feet. This attack was evenly matched. Li Mu let out a long breath. From now on, the history of him being suppressed by Xianming was gone. He did not take out the sun-shooting bow. With the sky-breaking spear in hand, he disappeared instantly. At the same time, a long sword appeared in Xianming's hand. She stabbed forward without any hesitation. Cold light flashed in the void. The tip of the sword and the spear collided. The aftershock spread out and even affected the other people's battle. Whether it was Wuxia King and the other cultivators of the demonic path, they all stopped fighting at the same time. They stood on two sides with clear lines of shock in their eyes. Ming Er and Ming San did not expect that Li Mu, who had to run away from them not long ago, could actually be on par with the 5 forefathers. Wuxia King and the others were even more shocked. More than half a year ago, Li Mu still had to rely on that terrifying bow to force the woman in white to retreat. However, in just half a year he was able to fight the woman in white head-on without using that bow. Such speed of growth was truly shocking. In an instant, these two figures became the focus of everyone's eyes. Obviously, the outcome of this battle would determine the outcome of the two forces. Everyone in the field had a tacit understanding not to interfere. Li Mu felt a huge force coming from the tip of the spear. His body was bounced back again. The sword in her hand was obviously a magic treasure that was not inferior to the sky-breaking spear. Even Ao Xian would have to avoid a peak Xianming cultivation. Li Mu did not underestimate his opponent. He used the demon-slaying protection incantation and summoning wind and rain at the same time. In an instant, the space where Xianming was filled with wind and lightning. The rain was mixed with wind and lightning and it swept towards her. The power of a past magic power executed by a level 7 cultivator was naturally extraordinary. Ming Er, Wuxia King and the others looked at the area from afar and shuddered. This was a magic power that could seriously injure or even kill a level 7 cultivator. In the face of this magic power that even a level 7 cultivator would find difficult to resist, a wave of heat surged out of Xianming's body. The wave of heat swept over, and the rain that fell on her evaporated instantly. The dark clouds above were also affected and dispersed. The wind that blew on her body could only make her hair flutter. Wherever the wave of heat passed, the wandering souls in the surroundings also disappeared instantly. The Azura King and the others who were watching the battle from afar were forced back into Fengdu City. White light flashed outside Li Mu's body. It formed a spherical shield that protected his body. Although this wave of heat could not hurt his body, Li Mu's clothes could not withstand it. If he was not careful, he would be naked with everyone present. In the two short exchanges, neither Li Mu nor Xianming had the upper hand. In a fight between cultivators of the same level, especially those at the peak of their cultivation, it was hard to determine the winner in a short time. There was almost no magic power that could be executed by a level 7 cultivator that could end a cultivator of the same level in an instant. The terrifying thing about the sun-shooting bow was its instantaneous explosive damage. No magic or Dao technique could achieve that. Li Mu and Xianming were hundreds of feet away from each other. They did not attack again. Both of them knew very well that under normal circumstances, neither of them could do anything to the other. They could only keep exhausting each other and gamble on who would be the first to die. Of course, this was only under normal circumstances. When Li Mu extended his hand and retrieved the sky-piercing spear, Xuanming's expression changed drastically. He waved his sleeves and swept up the few demon Dao cultivators beside him. His figure gradually faded. "Freeze." At this moment Li Mu said softly. His fading figure paused for a moment and then disappeared. But beside him there were two figures who were left behind. Ming Air and Ming San stood in place stunned. The Azura King, Yenluo King, Rakshasa King, Yeksha King, Gui, and the ghost servant slowly looked at them. Chapter 619. I'll leave these two to you. Senior Ghost Servant, follow me. After handing Nightmare 2 and Nightmare 3 to Luosha King and the rest, Li Mu waved his sleeves. His and the ghost servant's figures gradually faded and disappeared. Above the West Sea, a white line rapidly headed south. Along the way the seawater evaporated and countless fishes and prawns died. When the aquatic demons felt those powerful auras, they were so frightened that they fled into the deep sea, not daring to show their faces. Wherever the white line passed, a 6th-level flood dragon lay on the bottom of the sea, trembling. After cultivating for close to 100 years, he had never seen such a huge formation. The 5 auras that passed by just now gave him a strong sense of oppression. They were undoubtedly 7th-level powerhouses. Those powerhouses left quickly. Before he could heave a sigh of relief, another 2 powerful auras swept over from behind. This flood dragon did not dare to reveal any of its aura. It waited until the surface of the sea calmed down before it dared to show its head. Looking in the direction where those powerhouses disappeared, its eyes were filled with shock. At this moment, it finally realized that the 2 people who came later seemed to be chasing after the 5 people. 2 7th-level powerhouses chasing after 5 7th-level powerhouses. What was going on? Although he was very curious, he was still afraid of those powerhouses' auras. He did not dare to go closer to watch. Swinging his tail, he swam towards the deep sea. Xian Ming brought a few subordinates and escaped from the ghost realm of the Shen continent to the West Sea. From the West Sea to Yenzhou, she flew all the way to the South Sea. In her 10,000 years of cultivation, she had rarely been in such a sorry state. When Li Mu was at 6th level, he could already hurt her with the sun-shooting bow. Now that he was at 7th level, his dermic powers were 10 times stronger than before. He only needed to shoot an arrow with all his strength to kill her on the spot. 10,000 years of inheritance would be destroyed by one arrow. With the sun-shooting bow in hand, the only one in Sage Sect who could kill Li Mu was the 3rd Elder. But the moment the 3rd Elder stepped out of Ghost Island, he would be stopped by Tianjizi. This was why Li Mu could do whatever he wanted on the mainland. In Yenzhou, on an endless grassland wherever Xian Ming passed, the vegetation would wither and turn to dust. Her speed was extremely fast, but in the pass she had to pass, there was a ripple in the void and 2 figures appeared. Li Mu's shrinking technique allowed him to cross hundreds of miles easily. In the past, he had been unable to escape the pursuit of the mysterious underworld being. However, the situation was reversed now. The 5 demonic Dao ancestors would not be able to escape his grasp. Li Mu gave the sky-breaking spear to the ghost servant for the time being. He held the sun-shooting bow in his hand. Before he could draw the bow, Xian Ming said in a cold voice, "After shooting the arrow, do you still have the power to resist?" She wasn't exaggerating. Li Mu was sure that if he shot an arrow with all his strength, even if Xian Ming didn't die, he would be like Blood River and lose all his fighting power. However, at that time, Li Mu would not have a single drop of magic power left. The ghost servant would be besieged by the others, especially with the black-robed man around. It would be difficult for him to win. At that time, Li Mu's magic power would not have recovered and he would be in a dangerous situation. Exchanging one with Xian Ming was obviously not a smart decision. He thought for a moment and suddenly shot the bow at the black-robed man. He only used 10% of his magic power for this arrow. It was enough to kill an initial Transcendent Realm expert. The black-robed man's expression changed when he was targeted by the sun-shooting bow. However, he couldn't dodge. A black light flickered on his body. Suddenly, a scale flew out from his chest and met the arrow. Boom! The golden arrow and the black scale collided and exploded. A spatial crack swept out. Xian Ming quickly retreated with the others. The black-robed man only spat out a mouthful of blood. He actually blocked the sun-shooting bow's arrow. Dragon race. Li Mu recognized the black-robed man from the scale. He was actually a 7th realm black dragon. The dragon race's strength was already higher than those of the same realm. In addition, they had strong bodies and powerful supernatural powers. Human and Yao cultivators of the same realm couldn't do anything to them. The scale that flew out from his body was one of the dragon race's life-saving supernatural powers. The only reverse scale on their body was refined into a magic treasure. It would fly out at a critical moment to protect their body. It could block a fatal blow for them. The arrogant dragon race was actually willing to be a subordinate of the demonic path. Li Mu didn't hesitate and drew the bow again. At this moment, Xian Ming suddenly grabbed the air and grabbed a figure from the flask heaven space. The figure blocked in front of her. She coldly looked at Li Mu and said, "Try shooting another arrow." Seeing Xian Ming grabbing the shoulder of the white-robed female corpse in front of him, Li Mu's face darkened. He raised the sun-shooting bow and aimed at the sky. An arrow light whizzed by and disappeared in the sky. The female corpse that Xian Ming used as a threat had the same face as Su He. It was Su He's body under the altar in the Bay of Clearwater. After she risked her life to save Su He, she disappeared alone. Li Mu and Su He never saw her again. Although she was an independent body, she still had an inseparable relationship with Su He. She didn't expect that she would fall into Xian Ming's hands. Xian Ming saw Li Mu's reaction and knew that she had made the right bet. He really cared about the spiritual corpse in her hands. In her previous life, she had already made preparations for this life. She had set up altars in countless places to cultivate spirit corpses that would accept her memory inheritance. Although she had only chosen one in the end, those altars had all been left behind. To cultivate the spiritual corpses that were compatible with her, she had sealed a drop of her essence blood in each altar. When Li Mu had forced her out of the ghost domain, she had felt the aura of her essence blood at the border of the ghost domain. Following this aura, she had easily found the spiritual corpse. At first glance, Xian Ming had guessed the connection between this spiritual corpse and the female ghost by Li Mu's side. She had conveniently taken her away to deal with today's situation. Li Mu held the sun-shooting bow. He could shoot Xian Ming to death. However, before that, she would destroy the spiritual corpse that Su He had turned into. Xian Ming looked at Li Mu and said, "Give me all the heavenly scriptures. Otherwise I will kill her." Li Mu looked at her as if she was an idiot and asked, "Do you think it's possible?" Xian Ming frowned and said, "Give me back the heavenly scriptures you stole from the holy sect." Li Mu shook his head and said, "You can't threaten me." Xian Ming's sharp fingernails scratched Su He's spiritual corpse's neck, leaving some shallow marks. She said, "Then you should collect her corpse." Li Mu wasn't moved. With an indifferent face he said, "You can do whatever you want. You kill her and I will kill you. It's revenge for her." Xian Ming frowned. "You don't want to save her?" Li Mu asked back, "Why should I save her?" Xian Ming said, "She's the one you like. She and that woman have the same origin. They look exactly the same." Li Mu looked at her and said indifferently, "Shallow? The appearance is only the appearance. The inner beauty is the real beauty. If you really like someone, you shouldn't just like her appearance. Besides, I already have one with such an appearance. What's the point of having another one? Is she worth exchanging the heavenly scriptures for?" Although Xian Ming had cultivated for 10,000 years and had rich experience in fights of magical powers, she knew nothing about the relationship between men and women. The bodies that she inherited the memories from were all adult women. Their memories were erased. After receiving her inheritance, only battles and expansion accompanied them. She thought that the reason why Li Mu would yield was because of the memories about Ao Qing from thousands of years ago. Ao Qing had many companions. Not only were there sisters who looked similar, but there were also female cultivators who had the same origin as Ao Qing. Li Mu's temperament was very similar to Ao Qing's to a large extent. She thought that Li Mu would yield because of this, but she realized that she was wrong. At this moment, Li Mu looked at Xian Ming and said, "Or you can choose to let her go. I will let you go." There was only Li Mu and the ghost servant. It was not realistic to keep Xian Ming and these people. It was better to exchange for Su He's spiritual corpse, which could solve one of her worries. Li Mu's words made Xian Ming sink into contemplation. Apparently, in Li Mu's heart, the heavenly book was more important than the woman's spiritual corpse. And this spiritual corpse was more important than her. If Li Mu didn't care about this spiritual corpse, one arrow could destroy her 10,000 years of effort. At that time, although Xian Ming's spiritual power would be exhausted, the ghost servant could protect him and retreat safely. Xian Ming pondered for a while and suddenly pushed Su He's spiritual corpse towards Li Mu. Then he led the few people beside him and fled towards the south. Li Mu couldn't chase after Xian Ming because Su He's spiritual corpse was unconscious. Her body was burning red. Before Xian Ming left, he had planted the corpse fire poison in her body. If Li Mu didn't care about her and went to chase after Xian Ming, she would be burned to ashes by the corpse fire poison from the inside out. She was worthy of being one of the few old monsters who had lived for 10,000 years. She only used this trick to delay Li Mu. Li Mu held the spiritual corpse. Her eyebrows and hair were covered with white frost. Her body was gradually frozen. However, the ice layer close to her body quickly melted into water and then condensed again. Li Mu kept dispersing the corpse fire in her body and said to the ghost servant, "Let's go back first." He held the spiritual corpse and disappeared in a flash. At this time, Xianming's face was as cold as ice among the figures who were rushing to the South Sea. Because of Li Mu's appearance, the operation led by her had failed again. Every time she met Li Mu, he would become stronger. Now, in terms of spiritual power, he wasn't weaker than her. With the sun shooting bow, even she had to run away. Unknowingly, Li Mu's threat to the sage sect had surpassed Xuanzong. He had become their biggest enemy. After returning to the Ghost Island, she went straight to the high tower in the center. Not long after, on the high tower of the Ghost Island, the third forefather heard Xianming's words and slowly opened her closed eyes. She said, "Whether it's Xuanzong or Li Mu, don't worry about them. The two senior brothers are about to come out. You should also immediately go into seclusion to increase your cultivation. The curtain is about to open." Xianming's face was filled with joy. Senior brothers have finally come out. The third forefather nodded. Then she looked at the horizon and said in a low voice, "We have waited for 10,000 years for this day. Tianjizi, let's see how you will stop them when the time comes." Soon Xianming flew out of the high tower. She looked at the man in black and said, "Ao Xian's sun shooting bow is in Li Mu's hands. You know what to do, right?" The man in black nodded and said, "I will return to the clan and inform the elders." Chapter 620. Ghost Domain Fengdu. In a quiet room, Li Mu placed his palms on the back of the spirit corpse. The cold air from his palms continuously flowed into her body. Around the two of them were countless fulu. The fulu produced endless cold air and the entire room was covered in a layer of ice. The poison of Xianming's corpse fire was extremely overbearing. Li Mu spent several hours to help her get rid of it. When the last trace of fire poison was removed, the spirit corpse's eyes suddenly opened. Feeling that there was someone behind her, she seemed to have recalled something. Her face quickly became alert. Her body suddenly turned, and the two sharp teeth at the corner of her mouth shone with cold light. She bit towards Li Mu's neck. Li Mu reached out and pinched her mouth in time, saying, "Don't bite, it's me." When she saw Li Mu, the spirit corpse's expression froze. Her alert expression gradually disappeared. Her rapidly growing nails also retracted. She began to look around with a confused gaze. Until she saw Su-He standing at the door of the quiet room, a trace of joy naturally appeared on her face. Li Mu stood up, clapped his hands and left the quiet room. He said to Su-He, "You talk to her." Since the day the spirit corpse was born, she had been in the underground altar. It had only been a few years since she came out. Her intelligence was about the same as a child's. Perhaps only Su-He could communicate with her without hindrance. Li Mu came outside. Ming Er and Ming San had already been captured. Although they were hooting loudly just now, they were now like ostriches with their heads lowered. Before Li Mu came back, Ming Yi had already persuaded them. Before the three elders of Yu and Ming submitted to the demon sect, they were brothers with different surnames. They had been together for dozens of years and knew each other very well. Ming Yi's action saved Li Mu a lot of effort. He ordered the two to hand over their soul blood and then began to think about something. Due to the special geographical environment of the ghost domain, communication and support were extremely inconvenient. This time Li Mu happened to arrive, but the next time might not be so coincidental. After careful consideration, he decided to move Fengdu to the edge of the ghost domain near Great Zhou. In this way, if the mysterious underworld race were to make a comeback, as long as the teleportation formation was activated, everyone would be able to provide support immediately. After waiting for a while, Su-He walked out of the hall with a spirit corpse that looked exactly like her. The spirit corpse followed closely behind her, as if treating her as its backbone. Her spiritual intelligence was no more than 10 years old. There were two identical Su-He's. One was mature and charming, while the other looked somewhat silly and silly. When they walked together, the contrast was huge. Li Mu had asked Su-He about it. After they parted, the spirit corpse had instinctively come to the ghost realm, found a place rich in yin qi and began to cultivate. After that, she was captured by Xianming and locked in a narrow space. When she appeared again, she was already a hostage. At first, Li Mu couldn't figure out how Xianming could find her so accurately. Later he thought that the altar under the Bay of Clear Water was too strange. It must have been the work of the demon sect. Thinking about the content recorded in the heavenly book, Li Mu was almost certain that this was the altar that Xianming had prepared to refine the host. By a freak combination of factors, it became the spirit corpse that's Suhi's body. He looked at the spirit corpse that was standing closely behind Suhi and said to Suhi, "Since she's following you now, you should give her a convenient name. You're Suhi, how about calling her Su Miao?" Suhi rolled her eyes and said, "What kind of name is that?" Li Mu said, "You're he, she's Miao. You two are originally one. I think it's quite suitable." Before Suhi could respond, the spirit corpse behind her murmured, "Su Miao, my name?" Under Li Mu's hasty decision, Su Miao became her name. She had a natural closeness to Suhi, like she was her younger sister. Li Mu thought that he had a twin sister-in-law that wasn't very smart. Thinking about what happened just now, he said to Suhi, "There's something I need to discuss with you. I want to move Fengdu to the edge of the ghost domain. This way it'll be easier to send messages and support in the future." The enclosed environment of the ghost domain was indeed a big drawback. Suhi nodded and said, "You decide." 3 days later, the gates of Fengdu were tightly shut. All the ghost citizens were urgently summoned back to the city. They stayed in their own residences and were not allowed to go out. According to the guards of the Ghost Lord's mansion, Fengdu was going to be moved. They couldn't figure out how to move such a big Fengdu. Just as they were wondering, the ground under their feet suddenly shook at noon. Even though the ghosts in the city were extremely curious, they had already received orders and couldn't go out to investigate. Fengdu was shaking non-stop. If one looked from outside the city, the entire Fengdu had been uprooted from the ground and was floating 1,000 feet high. A giant bell enveloped the city, and there were several formations carved into the city. Within each formation there was a figure sitting inside. Li Mu sat cross-legged in the largest array. For the relocation of Fengdu, he had captured all the 7th realm experts of the ghost domain. The 4 ghost kings, the 3 elders of Yu and Ming, the ghost servants, and Li Mu, 9 7th realm experts, worked together to cast spells and easily uprooted Fengdu. Under the protection of the Dao Bell, they slowly moved towards the east. The space of the ghost domain wasn't stable, so Fengdu couldn't move too quickly. The 9 people used 7 days to move Fengdu to the new location. Li Mu had already ordered the 6th realm ghost cultivators under Suhi to empty the mountains there and create a plane to place Fengdu. Then he also moved the transportation array over. Now, even if the 3 patriarchs of the demon sect came personally, the ghost domain would be safe. After everything was settled, Li Mu summoned the 3 elders of Yu and Ming. "Greetings, Lord." After being persuaded by Ming Yi for a few days, Ming Er and Ming San were much more well-behaved. After entering the hall, they respectfully bowed to Li Mu. After all, their lives were in his hands, so they had to be respectful. Li Mu crossed his arms and looked down at Ming Er and Ming San. He said, "Tell me everything you know about the demon sect." All along, the demon sect had been powerful and mysterious in everyone's eyes. Until now, Li Mu didn't know much about the demon sect. Only by knowing yourself and your enemy could you win every battle. The enmity between him, Xian Ming, and the demon sect couldn't be resolved. The more information he knew, the more advantageous it would be for him. Ming Er looked up at Li Mu and said, "The sage sect?" "Ahem." Ming Yi coughed loudly. Ming Er immediately changed his words. "The demon sect's influence is spread across the 10 continents. What I know is only the Zhu continent." At Li Mu's request, Ming Er and Ming San told him everything they knew. During this time, the 3rd elder had entrusted them with important tasks, so they knew more than Ming Yi. After hearing everything, Li Mu's heart sank. The demon sect had 3 headquarters on the mainland. The ghost island in the depths of the South Sea was controlled by the 3rd elder, who was at the 8th realm. The other 2 headquarters of the demon sect were in Yenzhou and Juku. Everyone knew that there were 10 continents in the world, as well as the 3 islands that only existed in legends. Among the 10 continents, not all of them were as powerful as the Zhu continent. Changzhou and Fenglin were in the southeast of the Zhu continent. Compared to the Great Zhou, they were sparsely populated and didn't have many countries. Yingzhou was full of poisonous miasma and wasn't suitable for human habitation. Shenzhou and Yuan were in the extreme north, so they were even more desolate. The remaining Juku, Lu, Zhu continent, Sheng, and Yenzhou were all large continents with large populations. They were also places where the demon sect had been active for the past 10,000 years. Among them, the demon sect's 2nd elder was in charge of Yenzhou. The demon sect's 1st elder was in Juku. The ghost island was more powerful than all the Taoist sects combined. The demon sect had 2 headquarters like the ghost island. This wasn't good news. The only thing that comforted Li Mu was that the demon sect's ancestors weren't ranked based on who was more powerful. Perhaps in ancient times they were ranked based on strength. However, after so many generations, they would encounter all kinds of unexpected factors, causing them to be reborn at different times. This time the third elder was the first to be reborn. He was also the strongest among the ancestors. The demon sect's first elder and second elder hadn't reached the 8th realm yet. This could be considered good news, but it wasn't entirely so. Combining the fragmented memories of Blood River and the words of the 3 elders of Yu and Ming, Li Mu knew that the demon sect's current strength might be at its peak in the past 10,000 years. This didn't refer to absolute strength. After all, 10,000 years ago there were many 9th realm cultivators. Just one of them would be enough to destroy the current demon sect. At that time, the demon sect had countless powerful cultivators. Several 9th realm cultivators would appear at the same time. However, the cultivation world at that time was also full of powerful cultivators. The demon race, the dragon race, the ghost race, and the human race could all suppress the demon sect. Now, although the demon sect had declined, the entire cultivation world of the continent had declined even more. If the other 2 demon sect ancestors reached the 8th realm, they would be invincible and sweep the continent. It was only a matter of time before the demon sect's 3 elders reached the 8th realm. Thinking of this, Li Mu sighed softly. He was a little worried. Chapter 6:21. The reality in front of Li Mu was that if 3 8th-level cultivators appeared in the demonic path, even if he counted Xuanzong, the righteous path would not be a match for the demonic path. In terms of relative strength, the demonic path was in its best era in the past 10,000 years. Although the speed of his strength increase could be called miraculous, in front of the demonic path, it was far from enough. The Fulu school, the various Taoist sects, and everyone around Li Mu urgently needed to increase their strength. Only then would they have the strength to face the calamity that could befall them at any time. Li Mu unreservedly imparted to Su Miao the supernatural abilities of the corpse cultivator from the demonic path heavenly book. Then he left her a mirror-breaking pill. The ghost realm was very suitable for her cultivation. With Su He's help, she should be able to reach the 6th level in the near future. After discussing with Su He, she also planned to teach some important ghost techniques in the demonic path heavenly book to the 4 ghost kings and Feng Yi. This could not quickly increase their strength, but it could increase their combat strength. When facing enemies of the same level, they would be able to fight 5 against 6 or even 7. At the same time, under the arrangement of the ghost servant, Su He also prepared to go into seclusion to break through. Her method of breaking through was similar to Huanji's, but also different. Huanji was the same as Li Mu and the Empress. In essence, she broke through by refining the spirit of psychokinesis. Su He had the heavenly book. She was the master of the countless ghosts in the ghost realm. Through the demonic path heavenly book, she could borrow the power of the billions of souls in the ghost realm to break through. In a way, the significance of her advancement was more important than Li Mu's advancement. Becoming a ghost spirit meant that she could control all the ghosts and ghost cultivators in the ghost realm, including the 7th-level wandering souls. She would become the true master of the ghost realm. If she wanted to reach the 7th level, she would probably have to go into seclusion for a year and a half. They would not be able to see each other for a long time. Li Mu stayed in the ghost realm to accompany her for a few more days. She had originally thought that they could spend a few days together and take a big step forward in their relationship before she went into seclusion. However, she did not expect that their time together would eventually become a threesome. Su Miao followed Su He like a shadow. Every day she would follow them 24 hours a day. No matter what Li Mu did, she would blink her big eyes and look at them. A few days later, Li Mu finally couldn't take it anymore. He looked at her and said, "Miao Miao, can you go play by yourself and leave me and your sister alone for a while?" Hearing Li Mu's words, she immediately grabbed Su He's arm and glared at Li Mu, baring her 2 sharp teeth at him. Li Mu was naturally not afraid of her. He pinched her mouth and said fiercely, "If you dare to bite me, I will pull out your teeth." Su Miao obviously knew that Li Mu was not someone she could afford to provoke. She immediately hid behind Su He, but she still stared at him with a pair of big eyes. Li Mu couldn't argue with her. He could only take her everywhere with Su He. However, he couldn't help but think that if the 2 of them slept together in the future, she must accompany them. This was too exciting. Li Mu was not Ao Qing and had never experienced this kind of happiness. In the end, Li Mu still didn't have time to do anything with Su He and left the ghost realm alone. The reason why he left earlier than planned was that he had just received a sound transmission from Xian Jizi that Fu Daozi had come out of seclusion. After he came out of seclusion, Fulu School had another transcendent powerhouse. Fu Daozi's breakthrough was definitely not as simple as the addition of the super powerhouses of Fulu School. Whether it was Xian Jizi, Yuzhen Zi, Fulu School, other 7th realm powerhouses of the 6 sects, Li Mu, the Empress or Phantom Princess, Their breakthroughs were all with the help of external forces, not relying on their own cultivation. However, Fu Daozi was different. He was obsessed with studying the Fulu Dao. After Li Mu cracked the heavenly book of Fulu school, he went into seclusion for several years and finally comprehended the Fulu Dao and successfully broke through. This was the true transcendent. Even if he had just broken through, his strength was far from what other powerhouses who had advanced for many years could compare to. Baiyin Mountain. A stream of light flew in from outside the mountain and landed on the main peak. Li Mu quickly walked into the central Taoist palace and cupped his fists to a radiant old man. He smiled and said, "Congratulations, master." Fu Daozi looked at Li Mu and laughed. Then he patted him on the shoulder and said, "The most worthwhile thing in my life is to have a disciple like you." Then his tone changed and his face darkened. He said, "I already know what happened in the past few years. Xuanzong bullied Fulu school because it was weak. I will avenge you. Come with me to the East Sea and I will seek justice for you." As he spoke, his body naturally emitted a fierce aura. In the main hall, except for Li Mu, even the other two supreme elders and Xian Jizi felt the pressure double and couldn't help but take 2 steps back. As expected of a transcendent powerhouse who had advanced on his own, Li Mu estimated that Fu Daozi's strength was already above the 7th realm Black Dragon of the Demon Sect. He was only slightly weaker than Shen Ming and the Empress. In the entire Xuanzong, only Tian Jizi's strength was above him. However, the gap between their realms was like a heavenly punishment that couldn't be overcome. Li Mu smiled and said, "Master, don't be angry. The grudge with Xuanzong will be settled sooner or later, but not now. Now that the demon sect is closing in step by step, these grudges should be put aside." Fu Daozi slowly withdrew his aura and said, "Disciple, you know the big picture. Xuanzong will remember this debt for the time being." At this time 2 figures walked in from outside the hall. Lu Hanyan and Li Qing walked to Fu Daozi's side and said respectfully, "Greetings, Martial Granduncle." Li Mu introduced them to him. "This is Hanyan. Master, you have seen her before. This is Qing. They are both my wives, both of them?" Fu Daozi was stunned, and then he glanced at Li Mu with a meaningful gaze and said, "Since they are my disciples' wives, then there's no need to call me Martial Granduncle. If both of you are willing, then you can become my disciples. In this way both of you will be of the same generation, and it would prevent others from gossiping." Both of them were stunned, and then they looked at Xian Jizi and Yuzhen at the same time. If they became Fu Daozi's disciples, then their former master would become their senior brother and senior sister. Lu Hanyan and Li Qing didn't know if they should agree or not. Meanwhile, Fu Daozi glanced at Xian Jizi and Yuzhen and then he asked, "What? Both of you have a problem with that?" "No, of course not." Xian Jizi's expression changed and he immediately said to both of them, "Junior sisters, quickly greet Master." "Greetings, Master." "Greetings, Master." Both of them returned to their senses and immediately knelt on the ground to greet Fu Daozi as their master and disciple. When he walked out of the Dao Palace on the main peak, Li Mu was in an extremely happy mood. "Master is really considerate. My relationship with Lu Hanyan and Li Qing is really a bit messy. Martial uncle and 2 beautiful martial nieces have become Dao companions, and those who don't know the truth would think that I'm some improper senior. Senior brothers and junior sisters were a match made in heaven, and this was a common practice in the various large sections. So, no one would be able to gossip about them in the future." The news that Grand Supreme Elder Fu Daozi had ascended to the 7th realm and had accepted Elder Lu and Elder Li as his disciples quickly spread throughout White Cloud Mountain. With the addition of another expert to the sect, all the elders and disciples of the various peaks were greatly excited. At the same time, Elder Lu and Elder Li, who were originally 3rd-generation disciples, had become 2nd-generation disciples, and this caused quite a bit of heated discussion in the sect. Such a thing was impossible in the past. Obviously, the reason why they could have such privileges was because of Martial Uncle Ling Jizi. The resources that the 2nd-generation disciples could enjoy and their status in the sect were far from what the 3rd and 4th-generation disciples could compare to. Through this matter, the group of low-level disciples seemed to have found a shortcut to cultivation. If they could become Martial Uncle Ling Jizi's Dao companions, wouldn't they be able to become 2nd-generation disciples and not have to worry about their cultivation in the future? Therefore, in the next few days, the male disciples of Fulu school were surprised to find that some of the female disciples in the sect had changed from their usual plain and simple appearance. They were all dressed up gorgeously, and their clothes were also extremely gorgeous. They were flying around aimlessly between the various peaks. Li Mu was completely unaware of this. He was in seclusion on White Cloud Mountain to comprehend a divine ability. At a certain moment, Li Mu, who was in seclusion, suddenly opened his eyes. At the same time, dark clouds gathered in the sky above White Cloud Mountain. Then a rolling voice came from the clouds. "Li Mu, you brat, return the treasure of my dragon clan." Chapter 6:22. Dark clouds covered the sky above White Cloud Mountain. Lightning snakes danced in the clouds, and a few black shadows could be vaguely seen shuttling back and forth. Li Mu left the cave abode and flew into the sky as soon as he heard the voice. At the same time, several figures also rose into the sky from the various peaks. Fu Daozi looked angry and shouted, "Who are you? How dare you behave atrociously in my White Cloud Mountain?" As his voice fell, a sound wave spread out. Wherever the sound wave passed, the dark clouds in the sky dissipated, and 3 black dragons that were hundreds to hundreds of feet long appeared. The 3 black dragons hovered above White Cloud Mountain, emitting a strong pressure. The low-level disciples of the ancestral court were in an uproar when they saw this. What are those things in the sky? Deer horns, snake body, eagle claws, fish tail? Oh my god, they're dragons. What are the dragons doing here? They seem to be looking for trouble with our White Cloud Mountain. In the sky, the 3 black dragons flashed with black light and turned into 3 black-robed figures. The 3 of them had dragon horns on their foreheads. 2 of them had old faces and white hair. The last one was the black dragon that Li Mu had seen before. He was Xian Ming's subordinate. An elder from the dragon clan widened his eyes and asked, "Who is Li Mu?" Li Mu's figure floated to the front and asked indifferently, "Why are you looking for me?" The old dragon said coldly, "Hand over my ancestor Ao Xian's sun-shooting bow." These 3 black dragons were indeed here for the sun-shooting bow. Ao Xian had accidentally obtained the sun-shooting bow back then. Before Ao Xian died, he did not pass it to the Black Dragon clan. Instead, it was buried with his corpse in the underwater cave abode. From this point of view, it seemed reasonable for the Black Dragon clan to come and ask for the sun-shooting bow. However, the truth was that the sun-shooting bow was not created by Ao Xian. He had also obtained it by chance. It was like a heavenly book that could only be obtained by those with strength and opportunity. There was no reason for these dragons to come and ask for it today. Moreover, how could Li Mu hand over such a powerful treasure to others? If this treasure fell into the hands of the demon sect, they would be able to unify the 10 continents with the help of the sun-shooting bow before the other 2 ancestors of the demon sect could ascend. When facing the threat of the demon sect, Li Mu relied on this treasure the most. He glanced at the old dragon and said, "Don't think I don't know that the sun-shooting bow doesn't belong to you dragons." Ao Feng breathed out 2 streams of hot air from his nostrils. The dragon clan had always snatched the treasures they wanted. This time, someone else had snatched the treasures that used to belong to the dragon clan. He couldn't stand it anymore. He looked at Li Mu and asked coldly, "You mean you don't want to return it?" As soon as he finished speaking, he gritted his teeth and said, "Ao, you take him back." A black light flashed in front of Li Mu, and the figure of another dragon clan elder suddenly appeared. He stretched out a dragon claw and grabbed Li Mu's neck. The dragon clan was the strongest clan in the world. Even a newborn dragon had the strength of a human at the 4th realm. With the dragon clan's strong physical body and special abilities, they could often suppress human or demon experts of the same level. This old dragon was extremely fast. When he appeared beside Li Mu, no one could react in time. If he could capture Li Mu in one move and bring him back to the Dragon Palace to interrogate him slowly, with the speed of the Dragon Clan, no one present would be able to stop him. However, just as his dragon claw was about to touch Li Mu's neck, a white fist met it. Seeing that Li Mu had overestimated himself, a cold smile appeared on Aou's lips. The Dragon Clan was most proud of their bodies. Not to mention the human race, even the demon race and corpse cultivators, who were also known for their bodies, were far from being comparable to the Dragon Clan. Using a fist to meet his dragon claw was no different from hitting a rock with an egg. Boom. The fist and claw collided, and Aou's body flew backward. Li Mu also retreated several meters. The man and dragon shook their numb hands at the same time. Aou's dragon eyes were wide open as he looked at Li Mu, who was unscathed in disbelief. The moment the fist and claw collided, he even had the misconception that he was facing a 7th realm Dragon Clan member. These 3 black dragons had just arrived at White Cloud Mountain and were already flaunting their strength. They even attacked at the slightest disagreement. Fu Daozi's face suddenly darkened and he shouted angrily, "Four-legged snakes, you're courting death." He quickly formed a seal with his hands. In an instant, a golden rune appeared in the void and landed on Aou's body. When the rune entered his body, the Dragon Clan elder let out a painful roar. He rolled in the void and actually revealed his original form. Countless runes flickered on his black dragon body. He let out another dragon roar and spat out a dragon's breath that covered his entire body. Only then did the rune gradually disappear. At this moment, Fu Daozi had already closed in. He condensed a rune in the void again. This time, the rune turned into a blue ice dragon and bit the black dragon's body. Aoyu had lived for more than 100 years, but it was the first time she had seen such a divine ability. For a moment she didn't know how to deal with it. When the other dragon clan elder saw this, he wanted to step forward to help, but a green light suddenly appeared in his eyes. He stretched out his arms that were covered in black scales and blocked in a panic. He was pushed back 300 meters. When he saw the green light clearly, his expression changed drastically again. He said in shock, "Sky-splitting spear, damn it, you even stole the Dragon King's weapon." After he recovered from his shock, two enormous hammers appeared in his hands, and he smashed them fiercely at Li Mu. Li Mu raised his spear to block, but both of them were blasted flying. The strength of these two old dragons was extraordinary, and they were obviously stronger than most of the 7th-level experts that Li Mu had seen. If it wasn't for Fu Daozi's advancement, then besides him, no one in F Lu School would be a match for them. Li Mu and Ao Feng were locked in battle. On the other side, Fu Daozi and Aoyu were in a stalemate as well. At this moment, the two old dragons were slightly regretful in their hearts. The three of them were able to fight two human cultivators at the same time. They originally thought that victory was in the bag, but they never expected that just two random people from F Lu School would be able to fight them to a draw. If they knew this would happen, they would have brought more clansmen over. Their current manpower was clearly insufficient. Retreat. When he noticed that he'd started to fall into a disadvantageous position in the battle against Li Mu, Ao Feng roared decisively, and then fled towards the horizon. When Aoyu heard this, she broke free from Fu Daozi's grasp and fled quickly like a black bolt of lightning. As for the black dragon under Xian Ming, it had already fled as soon as Ao Feng's voice fell. The three dragons came quickly and left even faster. Only the disciples of F Lu School on the mountain were left looking at each other in dismay. Are they really dragons? The dragons don't seem to be as powerful as the legends say. Dull and tasteless. After returning to the main peak, Fu Daozi said coldly, "The next time they dare to behave atrociously in my White Cloud Mountain, I'll pull out their dragon tendons, peel off their dragon skin, and use their dragon blood as talisman liquid." Li Mu didn't speak. It was very obvious that this was the demonic path's attempt to sow discord. Although the dragon race wasn't flourishing, there were many experts. Stirring up conflict between the dragon race and Li Mu was the most beneficial to the demonic path. The appearance of these black dragons reminded Li Mu that he could also find a strong ally in the fight against the demonic path. The Demon Nation, Ghost Realm, Buddhist sect, and Tao sect were almost united by Li Mu. Only the dragon race appeared and disappeared mysteriously. Apart from Ching Xin, Li Mu couldn't even see the other dragons, let alone form an alliance. He didn't know if he could form an alliance with the South Sea Dragon race through Ching Xin, and then use the relationship between Ching Xin and Ching Xin to rope in the East Sea Dragon race. But what should he do specifically? Li Mu thought carefully, trying to find some experience from his past experiences. When he formed an alliance with the Demon Nation, he and the Queen of 10,000 Demons were together. When he formed an alliance with the Ghost Realm, he and the Lord of the Ghost Realm were together. Li Mu thought carefully and felt that this matter should be considered at length. Chapter 623. At the bottom of the North Sea, thousands of miles away from White Cloud Mountain, Ao Feng looked coldly at the black dragon and said angrily, "Ao Wu, that Li Mu's cultivation is no weaker than ours. Why didn't you tell us that there was such a powerful cultivator in the F Lu School? If they had known, they would not have been in such a sorry state today." The black dragon said helplessly, "Great Elder, please calm down. After I found out that the sun-shooting bow was in Li Mu's hands, I immediately returned to the clan to report. I didn't know that his cultivation was so strong, and I didn't know that there was another powerful cultivator in the F Lu School who was no weaker than the two elders." Of course, he knew that Li Mu's cultivation was no weaker than the two elders. The reason he had deliberately concealed it was because of the fifth Patriarch's instructions. Only by lowering the importance they placed on Li Mu and causing them to misestimate the strength of Li Mu and the F Lu School would they fail in their mission. Only then would the conflict between the Black Dragons and Li Mu be intensified. That was what he really wanted. The fact that the F Lu School had another powerful cultivator was beyond his expectations. According to his plan, the two elders should have barged into the F Lu School, fought a huge battle, and returned with serious injuries. From then on, the Black Dragons and the F Lu School would have an irreconcilable feud. The fifth Patriarch's mission would then be completed. At this moment, the other Black Dragon Elder said, "The human race has an old saying, you can hide for a while but you can't hide forever. I don't believe that he will be hiding in the Fu school forever." Ever since Ao Xian's ancestor had fallen, the Black Dragons had never stopped searching for the sun-shooting bow. For tens of thousands of years, although the Black Dragons claimed to be the noblest and most powerful race on the mainland, apart from the era of Ao Qing Dragon King and Ao Xian, the Black Dragons had never truly dominated the mainland. Once the sun-shooting bow was taken back, the Dark Dragon clan would regain the glory of Ao Xian's ancestor. Ao Yu pondered the importance of this matter and realized that he had been too careless in his actions this time. He had underestimated Li Mu's strength. He looked at the Black Dragon and said, "The sun-shooting bow is ours. I can't wait that long. Ao Wu, return to the West Sea and invite the other two elders, Aoan and the other Tier 6 juniors. It's time to let them know the strength of the dragon race." "Yes." Ao Wu cupped his fists respectfully. The moment he turned around, his lips curled up slightly. Baiyun Mountain. Li Mu did not chase after the three Black Dragons. Based on his understanding of the dragon race and the fatal attraction of the sun-shooting bow, they would return sooner or later. In order to fight against the demonic Dao, the Dragon Clan was a force that must be won over, but that did not include the Black Dragon Clan. Because of the existence of the sun-shooting bow, the Black Dragon Clan and Li Mu were destined to be like fire and water. If he captured the three dragons now, it would inevitably alarm them, which would be detrimental to his plan of catching them all in one fell swoop. In the next few days, Baiyun Mountain was peaceful as usual. There were no unusual movements. Li Mu was also not in a hurry to enter seclusion. Instead, he went back and forth between Baiyun Mountain and Purple Cloud Peak, guiding the cultivation of the elders and preaching to the low-level disciples. In terms of cultivation knowledge, there was probably no one in the world who could compare to Li Mu. These young disciples represented the future of Fulu School. At the beginning of their cultivation, it was very necessary to guide them on the correct path of cultivation and prevent them from taking the wrong path. Li Mu did not just teach Fulu blindly. He talked about alchemy, artifact refinement, body refinement, mystical abilities, and the path of cultivation. Interest was equally important. He hoped that the disciples in the sect would be able to find the path of cultivation that they liked at the beginning of their cultivation. Every time he preached, there would be no empty seats in the training hall. Most of the disciples could only float in the air. The disciples of the other peaks could only envy Baiyun Mountain and Purple Cloud Peak. This was because the heads of these two peaks were Elder Lu and Elder Li. Uncle Master Ling Jizi often appeared here. Aside from the routine preaching, it was very convenient for them to ask Uncle Master Ling Jizi if they had any questions about their daily cultivation. In the crowd, two new female disciples looked at the figure sitting cross-legged in front of them. There was a faint excitement on their faces. The older girl whispered, "Junior Sister Ying, we actually fought side by side with Uncle Master Ling Jizi. I even invited him to hunt wandering souls together." Speaking of that matter, the girl next to her stuck out her tongue and said, "If it weren't for Uncle Master Ling Jizi, we would have all died in the realm of ghosts." Wu Qian said, "I wonder if Uncle Master Ling Jizi still remembers us." After the two of them whispered a few words, they closed their mouths and listened intently to Li Mu's teachings. 2 hours later, the day's teachings ended. Li Mu's figure gradually faded away, but the disciples on the training ground remained where they were for a long time. They were still stuck in the enlightenment they had just experienced. Chen Yingying and Wu Qian had successfully entered the ancestral court not long ago. They were now fourth-generation disciples of Baiyun Mountain. When the two returned to their residence, they suddenly found a figure standing in the courtyard. Seeing that familiar figure, the two's delicate bodies trembled. They immediately went forward and respectfully said, "Greetings, Uncle Master Ling Jizi." Li Mu smiled and said, "You two also came to the ancestral court." When he went to the realm of ghosts for the first time, he met the two by chance. At that time, Chen Yingying was still an outer sect disciple of Fulu School, and Wu Qian was a rogue cultivator. Now, looking at their clothes, they were clearly fourth-generation disciples of Fulu School. Although the two were women, they were courageous and affectionate. Li Mu still had a deep impression of them. He stretched out his hand and 2 bottles of pills appeared in his palm. Li Mu handed the pills to them and said, "Meeting again is fate. These 2 bottles of pills are for you. Go into seclusion and refine them. They should be able to help you break through as soon as possible." The 2 women respectfully accepted the pills and said, "Thank you, Uncle Master Ling Jizi." Li Mu looked at them as if he was looking at a junior and said, "Cultivate well. If you have any questions about cultivation, You can ask your uncle Master Ling Jizi or me. Chen Yingying and Wu Qian nodded respectfully. Even though Wu Qian was actually older than Li Mu, when facing him she couldn't help but feel the admiration of a junior towards an elder. After a short chat with the two women, Li Mu planned to leave. Suddenly, he turned his head and looked at the distant horizon. At the end of the northern horizon, a black line suddenly appeared. Li Mu's eyes flashed with a golden light. He saw that at the end of his line of sight, the originally clear and cloudless sky was now covered by dark clouds. The clouds covered the sky and the sun. Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled. Black dragons swam in the dark clouds. They were wrapped by the dark clouds and swept towards the direction of White Cloud Mountain. The dark clouds were extremely fast. From the time Li Mu saw the black line to the time when the dark clouds flew above White Cloud Mountain, it only took a dozen breaths. When the dark clouds enveloped White Cloud Mountain, it was followed by an extreme pressure. At this moment, everyone in the ancestral court of White Cloud Mountain, from the low-level disciples to the elders of the peaks, felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their hearts. They couldn't breathe. More than 10 black dragons emerged from the dark clouds and circled above White Cloud Mountain. The scene was spectacular and oppressive. One of the black dragons opened its mouth, and Ao Feng's voice rumbled out. Li Mu, you little thief, and that old fellow who drew talismans, come out. Li Mu and Fu Daozi immediately flew into the sky. Then Tianjizi, Yuzhenzi, and the other two Grand Supreme Elders also quickly rushed over. Apart from Jade Sun Zi, who was far away in the Pill Cauldron sect, although the current Fulu school already had 6 7th realm cultivators, they couldn't compare to the dozen or so black dragons in the sky in terms of numbers or pressure. 6 of the dozen or so black dragons exuded 7th realm pressure. The other 6 also had 6th realm auras. After the previous humiliation, Ao Feng was determined to take back the sun-shooting bow in one fell swoop. This time, the Black Dragon race's elites were all present. The 4 great elders of the wind, rain, thunder, and lightning were all present. In addition to the current Black Dragon race's Dragon King Ao En, the prodigy Ao Wu who left the dragon race many years ago, and all the 6th realm juniors in the race, this force was enough to flatten Fulu school. Li Mu looked at the flaunting group of giant dragons above his head and was a little surprised. The dragon race was indeed as powerful as the ancient mutated beasts. Just the Black Dragon race alone had 6 7th realm cultivators. With their powerful individual strength and numerous other powerful cultivators, they could suppress almost any sect in the entire continent except for the demon sect in Xuanzong. Ao Feng roared from above, hand over the sun-shooting bow and I'll spare your lives. Otherwise after today, there will be no Fulu school in this world. As his voice fell, the dozen or so giant dragons roared in unison. Their voices reverberated through the heavens and earth. The low-level disciples of Fulu school all covered their ears, their expressions pained. The peak masters immediately used their magic to protect them, preventing them from getting hurt. Li Mu looked up at them and said indifferently, "You're bullying us with more dragons, right?" Ao Feng sneered and said, "What do you want?" Li Mu looked at Shenjizi and Shenjizi nodded. With a wave of his hand, 4 rays of light shot out and landed on the 4 pillars carved with runes on the main peak square. As the rays of magic power entered, the 4 pillars suddenly emitted a white light. In the next moment, 4 whirlpools suddenly appeared in the 4 directions of the main peak. The Pill Cauldron sect master, Wu Chenzi, walked out from one of the whirlpools with Jade Sun and 2 Grand Supreme Elders. The Spirit Array sect master and 2 Grand Supreme Elders walked out from another whirlpool. The Southern sect master and 2 Grand Supreme Elders, and the Northern sect master and 2 Grand Supreme Elders appeared in the last 2 whirlpools. The 5 Taoist sects had a total of 19 7th realm cultivators. They surrounded the dozen or so giant dragons in the middle. Finally, a giant bell descended from the sky. While it covered everyone, it also completely sealed off the entire area. Looking at the Black Dragon race that was completely stunned, Li Mu said indifferently, "Do you think that you're the only ones who know how to bully with numbers?" Chapter 624. Li Mu guessed that the Black Dragon race wouldn't give up. He had been waiting for this moment for a long time. White Cloud Mountain's long-distance teleportation array was originally built to guard against the Demon Dao. At this moment it came in handy. They didn't even need to activate all of them. Just the 5 Taoist sects were enough to capture all of them. In a battle of this level, those 6th realm black dragons were of no use. They could be ignored. The ones that were slightly more troublesome were the few level 7 black dragons. Among them, the 3 dragons that came to White Cloud Mountain last time were the strongest. The 3 extra dragons were only equivalent to the transcendent initial realm. Even if the dragon race had a natural advantage, the 5 sects experts were more than enough to deal with them. Without giving the black dragon race any time to react, the 5 sects supreme elders and sect masters attacked at the same time. In front of them, those 6th realm black dragons couldn't even withstand a single blow. 7 black dragons were immediately captured. Their cultivation was sealed, and they were casually thrown to the side of the mountain. The remaining 5 7th realm black dragons and Xianming's black dragon saw that the situation wasn't good. They all slammed their dragon heads against the Dao Bell. Even though the dragon clan was formidable and was capable of suppressing humans of the same cultivation realm, they couldn't stop their numbers from bullying the dragon clan. There was utterly no hope of victory in this battle. How could Ao Feng have imagined that the Talisman sect would actually be able to gather so many experts in an instant? Even if the Dark Dragon clan utilized all their strength, they were unable to deal with so many experts at the same time. Dong. The 6 dragons' huge bodies slammed against the Dao Bell, creating a loud boom. If it was just Li Mu alone, he might not be able to trap them. However, more than 10 7th realm experts from the 5 sects were currently inside the Dao Bell. Everyone's magic power was added to the Dao Bell. Even if the Demon Dao's 3 ancestors were trapped, they wouldn't be able to escape easily. Talisman Daozi's hands flickered with runes. He sneered, "You dare to come back?" As soon as he finished speaking, his figure disappeared. When he reappeared, he was already on Ao Feng. Talisman Daozi held the dragon horns with both hands. Talisman Daozi's palms surged into the dragon's body. Ao Feng's body rolled and couldn't break free. Li Mu was even more decisive. He took out the sun-shooting bow and shot an arrow. A black light flickered in front of Ao Feng's chest. The reverse scale that he had refined for many years blocked the fatal arrow. However, he also lost his only trump card. Li Mu used 20% of his dermic powers for this arrow. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Li Mu shot 5 arrows in a row, exhausting all the magic power in his body. Then he flew to the side and quietly recovered his magic power, leaving the battlefield to the others. The Dragon Clan was indeed the only ancient beast clan that had survived. Their innate abilities were extremely powerful, and their physical bodies were also incomparably powerful. In a situation where their magic power was about the same, it would take 2 human powerhouses of the same level to deal with them. However, even without Li Mu, there were still 18 7th realm cultivators here. Fu Daozi alone could fight the Black Dragon race's Great Elder alone, while the rest of the cultivators could deal with 1 7th realm cultivator with 3 people. In addition, Li Mu's 5 arrows had already depleted a lot of 7th realm cultivators. The situation inside the Dao Bell was almost one-sided. Talisman Daozi's body was surrounded by golden runes, suppressing Ao Feng. He said loudly, "Four-legged snake, I still lack a mount. If you are willing to become my mount, I will spare your life today. How about it?" Ao Feng said coldly, "Don't even think about it. The Dragon Clan will never be slaves." He let out a long roar and his 2 dragon horns flickered. A ball of lightning condensed between his dragon horns. This ball of lightning was black, and as the ball of lightning condensed, the black color on Ao Feng's body even became lighter. Almost instantly, the ball of lightning flashed in front of Fu Daozi. He wanted to teleport away, but he was entangled by Ao Feng's dragon tail and couldn't move at all. At this moment he felt a strong sense of danger. At the critical moment, Fu Daozi's figure suddenly disappeared, and Ao Feng's dragon tail entangled Ao Lei, one of the 4 great elders of the Black Dragon clan. Fu Daozi's figure appeared in Ao Lei's position. Li Mu released the hand seal, and the little bit of spiritual power that he had just recovered was used up again. Li Mu knew the divine powers of the Dragon Clan better than any of the dragons here. Ao Feng sacrificed part of his cultivation to this divine ability, and it was not something that Fu Daozi could resist. Although the ball of lightning couldn't destroy his soul, it could destroy his physical body and severely injure his primordial spirit. At this time, even if Aou only used the simplest summoning wind and rain, the severely injured Fu Daozi would be in danger of dying completely. With no other choice, Li Mu could only use Shadow Shift to switch his position with Ao Lei's, allowing him to dodge the attack. The ball of lightning landed on Ao Lei's body and exploded instantly. Ao Lei's body was flashing with lightning. Even though he had a strong body of the Dragon Clan, his body was badly mutilated and his scales peeled off. His aura was extremely weak and he couldn't even stay in the air and fell heavily. Ao Lei. Ao Feng roared angrily when he saw that his fellow dragon had been severely injured. He quickly locked onto Li Mu and charged at him without caring about anything else. However, at this time, Fu Daozi's figure appeared in front of him again. Get lost. Ao Feng only wanted to tear Li Mu into pieces at this time and charged at Fu Daozi fiercely. Fu Daozi waved his hands and a Fulu barrier appeared in front of him. He snorted and said, "If you want to bully my disciple, you'll have to get through me first." The Dragon Clan originally wanted to bully Ao Feng with their numbers, but they didn't expect that it would really turn out like this. However, they were the ones being bullied. On the other side, Ao Wu's expression gradually became determined. At this point, Ao Wu knew that the mission given by the fifth ancestor had failed. Even he couldn't protect himself. If he fell into Li Mu's hands, his fate was predictable. Looking at Li Mu, who was not far away, a trace of fierceness appeared in his eyes. He activated 100% of his spiritual power and temporarily broke away from the three people surrounding him. He turned into a black thunderbolt and shot at Li Mu. If his death could be exchanged for Li Mu's death, then everything would be worth it. In the process of rushing towards Li Mu, an extremely strong spiritual power fluctuation suddenly came from his body. Fu Daozi's expression changed drastically, and he hurriedly reminded, "Oh no, he's going to self-destruct." The self-destruction of a 7th realm dragon was enough to level White Cloud Mountain to the ground. At this moment, all the low-level disciples of White Cloud Mountain below the 5th realm would be buried with him. This dragon wanted to drag Li Mu down with him while destroying the ancestral court of Fulu School. Of course, Li Mu wouldn't let him do as he wished. With a thought, the Dao Bell flashed and then shrunk rapidly, trapping the dragon inside. Following a dazzling ray of light, the Dao Bell started to expand outwards and then shrunk again. A moment later, the Dao Bell returned to normal, but a black hole appeared in the space. As time passed, the black hole slowly closed. Everyone present, including Fu Daozi, felt a chill run down their spines. If they didn't stop this dragon from self-destructing, only 5 of the 6 Dao sects would be left. Not only were the Dao sect members shocked, but even the Black Dragon race didn't expect Ao Wu to be so unyielding. They were filled with grief and humiliation. At this moment they actually wanted to emulate Ao Wu and defend the dragon race's dignity. At that moment, Li Mu suddenly reached out and grabbed a ball of light from the Dao Bell. He scanned the ball of light with his divine consciousness and instantly understood why Ao Wu would do such a thing. This dragon called Ao Wu was no longer the prodigy of the Black Dragon race from the very beginning. His memories had been forcefully erased, and he had received another person's memories. This person's identity was a trusted subordinate of Xian Ming from 10,000 years ago. Back then, not only did the Demon Dao ancestors inherit their memories, but also their own trusted subordinates. He was under Xian Ming's orders to sow discord between the Black Dragon race and Li Mu. As the strongest dragon race in the 4 seas, becoming enemies with the Black Dragon race was almost equivalent to provoking another Xuanzong. However, even Xian Ming didn't know that the method Li Mu had originally prepared for them had coincidentally been used here. He waved his hand and threw that ball of light to Ao Feng. "A bunch of stupid dragons. Take a look for yourselves." When he saw that ball of light, Ao Feng felt that something was amiss. At this moment, he scanned the ball of light with his divine consciousness. Scenes of Ao Wu's memories flashed before his eyes. These memories didn't belong to Black Dragon Ao Wu at all. They belonged to an old monster whose memories had been passed down for 10,000 years. He had taken over Ao Wu's body and even instigated a war between the Black Dragon race and the Fulu School. He was the main culprit behind the current situation. After Ao Feng finished reading, he was shocked and furious. He immediately shouted, "Everyone stop." As soon as he said that, the other 3 black dragons transformed into their human forms and flew to his side. The powerful cultivators of the 5 sects also stopped for the time being. There was no way they could get the sun-shooting bow back. The most important thing now was how the Black Dragon race could save themselves. Although he was also in the wrong, Ao Feng could only push all the blame onto the dead Ao Wu. He looked at Li Mu awkwardly and said, "It's a misunderstanding. It's all a misunderstanding. We have all fallen into the demon's trap." Li Mu sneered and said, "Your entire Black Dragon race has bullied the Fulu School. Do you think you can just say that it's a misunderstanding?" Ao Feng hurriedly said, "It's all our fault. We are willing to pay some compensation." Li Mu's expression softened. Then he said, "Speaking of compensation, I have to settle it with you properly. If you didn't come to White Cloud Mountain, we didn't have to activate the teleportation formation. You have to compensate us 10 times the amount of spirit jades we used to come and go." Ao Feng immediately nodded and said, "It's only right." Li Mu continued, "Fellow Taoists and seniors from the other sects put down their sect matters and teleported here from afar. You have to compensate for the travel expenses and lost time. Although he didn't know what the travel expenses and lost time meant, Ao Feng could only nod in order to thank the Black Dragon race. That's fine too. Li Mu continued, your Black Dragon race attacked our White Cloud Mountain with great fanfare and left a huge psychological scar on our disciples. This debt can't be settled with just spirit jades. Ao Feng had a bad premonition. He asked, then what do you want us to do? Li Mu looked at him and said calmly, it's very simple. Your Black Dragon race will listen to our orders from now on as atonement. After 10 years you will be set free. Ao Feng said decisively, that's impossible. The dragon race will never be slaves. Of course, it wasn't that the dragon race would never be slaves. It was either that they weren't given enough or that they weren't threatened enough. Qing Xian was an example. Li Mu shrugged and said indifferently, of course you can also refuse. I don't mind refining all of you into dragon corpses. I have a group of friends who are very willing to do such a thing. Chapter 625. The Dragon Clan had always thought of themselves as the noblest clan in the world. Their clan's magical powers were incomparably powerful. Even a newborn dragon could fight with its breath, and its strength was comparable to a fourth realm demon. Whether it was humans, demons, or other plant spirits, they were all inferior creatures in their eyes. How could the proud Dragon Clan listen to the orders of inferior creatures? Any dragon would find it difficult to accept such humiliation. But if they did not accept it, the Black Dragon Clan would be exterminated today. When the human in front of him said that he would refine them into dragon corpses, his expression did not change. His eyes even had some eagerness to try. This gaze made Ao Feng feel an extreme chill from the bottom of his heart. His intuition told him that the person in front of him could really do such a cruel thing. The Black Dragon Clan had existed for so long. Including the newborn dragons and the old dragons that were about to die, there were only a few dozen of them. In order to take back the sun-shooting bow, he had mobilized the entire clan's powerhouses. If all of them died here, leaving only the old and weak in the clan, the Black Dragon Clan would not be far from extinction. He finally sighed helplessly in his heart and asked Li Mu, 10 years? Li Mu nodded and confirmed, 10 years. The current situation of the continent was changing rapidly. Many things could happen in 10 years. The strength of these black dragons could not be underestimated. 10 years was 10 years. What happened after 10 years could be dealt with in 10 years. Ao Feng looked at his fellow clan members who were also humiliated and helpless. He gritted his teeth and said, let's make a heavenly contract first. A heavenly contract was similar to a Tao oath. It was made with the blood of both parties and heaven and earth as witnesses. If there was a violation, heaven and earth would destroy the oath. Heaven and earth had their own set of trajectories. What people did, heaven was watching. All the cultivation clans in the world had to follow the Tao of heaven and earth. Li Mu and Ao Feng used their blood to write the contents of the oath in the void. After chanting the incantation of the heavenly oath, the words of the oath gradually disappeared. Li Mu clapped his hands and said, the contract has been made. It's time to talk about compensation. He pointed at the huge stone pillars engraved with runes around the main peak and said, do you see those stone pillars? That's the super long-distance transmission formation. Every time it's activated, it costs 1,000 upper-grade spiritual jades. 10 times the compensation would be 10,000, and a round trip would be 20,000. 4 stone pillars would be 80,000. Plus the travel expenses of the seniors of the various sects and the loss of time, it would be 100,000. Do you want to pay now or in installments? Ao Feng widened his dragon eyes and asked, how? How many? Li Mu cleared his throat and said, 100,000 upper-grade spiritual jades, not one more, not one less. The expression on Ao Feng's face was beyond shocked. That was 100,000 upper-grade spiritual jades, not middle-grade spiritual jades, not low-grade spiritual jades, and not even stones. What kind of teleportation array would consume so many spiritual jades? Extortion. This was blatant extortion. Li Mu knew what he was thinking. He was indeed extorting them, but they had finally met the biggest spendthrift in the 10 continents. How could they let him go so easily? The Dragon Clan was the most greedy and the most stingy clan. Li Mu often heard from Qing Xn that the elders of the clan slept on mountains piled with spiritual jades. The Black Dragon Clan was definitely wealthier than the 5 factions combined. Ao Feng's face was gloomy. This person was obviously taking advantage of the situation. However, he had no choice but to lower his head. 100,000 upper-grade spiritual jades was an unimaginable number for others. Although he would feel the pinch, it was not to the extent of hurting him. He gritted his teeth and squeezed out a few words. 100,000 it is. However, I don't have so many spiritual jades with me. I have to go back to the West Sea Dragon Palace to get them. Li Mu's eyes lit up and said, all right, I will go back with you. At the same time, I will calculate the compensation for my White Cloud Mountain disciples' psychological damage. When Ao Feng saw the light in Li Mu's eyes, he suddenly had an extremely bad premonition. He regretted going to the West Sea Dragon Palace in advance. He hurriedly said, no need, I will go back alone. Li Mu smiled and said, don't stand on ceremony. I have never been to the Dragon Palace before. I will go and broaden my horizons. Ao Feng shook his head and said, there is really no need. Li Mu smiled and said, of course. The various clans of humans and demons occupied the 10 continents. The vast oceans were occupied by the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas. The Dragon Clan was not a unified clan. The Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas was divided into the Black Dragon Clan, Silver Dragon Clan, White Dragon Clan, and Azure Dragon Clan. Among them, the Black Dragon Clan occupied the West Sea, while the North Sea was the territory of the Silver Dragon Clan. The Azure Dragon Clan and White Dragon Clan were active in the South Sea and East Sea. There were also great conflicts between the Dragon Clan. The division between the Dragon Clan was even more serious than that between humans and demons. It had even evolved into a chain of contempt. Among them, the most powerful Black Dragon Clan stood at the top of the Dragon Clan's despised chain. They believed that all dragons of other colors were inferior dragons. Next was the Silver Dragon Clan. The White Dragon and Green Dragon Clan were at the bottom of the Dragon Clan's despised chain. Li Mu had seen this in Ao Qing's diary. 10,000 years ago, the Dragon Clan's racial discrimination existed. Therefore, it was even more precious for him to become the king of the Dragon Clan as an Azure Dragon. Legends about him had been passed down in the Dragon Clan for 10,000 years. Although Li Mu felt that this discrimination was not right, he was also glad that it existed. The Dragon Clan's individual strength was extremely strong, but there were too few of them. There were billions of humans and over 100 million demons on the continent. However, the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas only added up to a little over 100. They were born at the middle stage. Their bodies were strong, their abilities were heaven-defying, and their cultivation speed was fast. Their only weakness was that it was extremely difficult for them to reproduce. Even so, the Black Dragon Clan's strength was comparable to the 2 Taoist sections. If the Dragon Clan of the 4 Seas did not have the racial discrimination engraved in their blood, they would unite into a unified Dragon Clan. If another 8th realm expert appeared in the Dragon Clan, the ruler of the continent would undoubtedly be the Dragon Clan. In today's world, there were not many people like Li Mu who knew the origin of the Dragon Clan. Like the ancient beasts, they were once the enemies of the human clan. In terms of life form, they were superior to humans and demons. They were the only ancient beasts that were still alive on the continent. Although Ao Feng was unwilling, he still brought Li Mu to the West Sea. As for his other clansmen, they were all left at White Cloud Mountain. As dragon corpses, he could not play any tricks. At the bottom of the West Sea, Ao Feng turned into his dragon form and swam into the deep sea without a word. Seeing Li Mu following beside him, his huge dragon eyes flashed with surprise. He gradually increased his speed. Gradually, he was shocked to find that even if he used all his speed, he could not pull away from Li Mu. From the beginning to the end, Li Mu was following beside him at a steady pace. The bottom of the sea was the territory of the Dragon Clan. The cultivation of humans would be suppressed, but the speed and strength of the Dragon Clan would be greatly increased. However, after this person entered the sea, his speed became even faster and the aura he emitted became even more dangerous. Sometimes, Ao Feng even wondered which one of them was the real Dragon Clan. The more secrets this person had, the more Ao Feng was afraid of him. He did not dare to test him anymore. Soon he brought him to a palace made of coral. The aura of the Dragon Clan was emitted from every palace. Li Mu scanned with his divine consciousness and found that these Dragon Clan cultivations were all below the 6th realm. They were either young dragons or old dragons with the aura of death around them. From this, it seemed that there were less than 40 black dragons. When the old dragons died, this number would decrease even more. Greetings, Elder Feng. Sensing Ao Feng's aura, a few black dragons flew out of the dragon palace and bowed to Ao Feng. Ao Feng nodded and brought Li Mu to the largest dragon palace in the deepest part of the dragon palace. Mountains of spiritual jade were piled on top of a palace that stretched as far as the eye could see. At the foot of the mountain, all kinds of precious spiritual herbs, ores and dharma artifacts were scattered around. Even Li Mu, who was used to seeing big scenes, was shocked speechless by this scene. Compared to the Black Dragon clan, the Fulu school was like a beggar. Standing in front of the undulating spiritual jade mountains, Li Mu's breathing became heavier. Ao Feng seemed to have sensed something and immediately reminded him, "We agreed on 100,000 upper-grade spiritual jade." I know. Li Mu nodded, but his gaze continued to sweep across the spiritual jade mountains. He even had a thought in his mind. Why not refine the Black Dragon clan? That way wouldn't all the spiritual jade here belong to him? Beside Li Mu, Ao Feng inexplicably shivered. As if realizing something, he immediately said, "Don't forget the heavenly oath." Li Mu sighed. He was not a demon after all, so he could not do such a thing. He looked at Ao Feng and said calmly, "Your Black Dragon clan gathered all the powerful cultivators of your clan to barge into my White Cloud Mountain. This caused great psychological trauma and mental damage to the disciples of my sect. You messed up their Tao hearts and affected their future cultivation, thus affecting the future development of our sect. We should settle this score." Chapter 626. After discovering that after seeing these treasures, Li Mu started to become overbearing. Ao Feng knew that the Black Dragon clan's losses this time were even greater than he expected. He pointed at a mountain made of spiritual jade and said, "These spiritual jades are my clan's apology to your disciple." Li Mu looked at the mountain of spiritual jade and hesitated for a long time. In the end he nodded. Ao Feng was still very generous. If he still didn't agree, it would be blatant extortion. As a righteous clan, how could he do such an unrighteous thing? After accepting the huge compensation from the Dark Dragon clan, Li Mu left the Crystal Palace. When he walked out of the door, he looked back longingly. Ao Feng reacted quickly and immediately closed the door. He extended his hand and said, "Please?" Although he was unwilling, Ao Feng still entertained Li Mu in the West Sea Dragon Palace. The seafood feast filled the entire table. It was quite sumptuous. Because the Dark Dragon clan's powerhouses other than Ao Feng were all detained in the Fulu school, the West Sea Dragon Palace was filled with young and old dragons. The Dark Dragon clan's cultivation talent was extremely high. Most of them could be called cultivation geniuses, but there were also some dragons with average talent. The dozen or so old dragons present were only at the 5th level. They were born at the 4th level and still hadn't broken through to the 6th level. Even if they could break through to the next level in the next few years, they would soon die from the exhaustion of their lifespan. Looking at these lifeless old dragons, Li Mu suddenly had an idea. He put down his chopsticks and asked an old dragon beside him in a seemingly casual manner, "Senior Dragon, how old are you this year?" Elder Ao Feng didn't introduce this human, but to be able to be brought to the Dragon Palace personally and set up a banquet, he must be a friend of the Dark Dragon clan. Thus, the dragons present were more polite to Li Mu. The old dragon's body was surrounded by an aura of death. When he heard Li Mu's question, sadness appeared in his cloudy eyes. He said, "I'm ashamed. In another 2 years I'll have lived for 2 years. The lifespan of a 5th realm dragon was only 260 years. In other words, this old dragon only had 2 years to live." Li Mu stretched out his hand. With a flash of white light, a Fulu appeared in his palm. He looked at the old dragon and said, "This is a heavenly secret talisman. It can increase one's lifespan by 10 years. I originally prepared this talisman for myself, but it seems that you need it more than I do. If you are willing, I can sell it to you." Li Mu actually had quite a few heavenly secret talismans in his possession. At that time he had not obtained the method to extend his lifespan from the demonic Tao, so he could only refine a few more heavenly secret talismans with the Empress in case he needed them. Later he learned the Great Sky-Stealing Array from the demonic Tao Heavenly Book. Although it consumed a lot of energy, it was several times more effective than the heavenly secret talisman. Thus, the heavenly secret talisman in his possession became useless. In line with the principle of making the best use of everything and not wasting it if possible, Li Mu planned to sell them to the dragons. Although it was impossible for these dragons with no natural talent to break through from the 5th realm to the 7th realm even if they had 10 more years of lifespan, who would refuse to live for 10 more years? As for why he did not use the Sky-Stealing Array to help them, firstly, Li Mu needed to deal with the heavenly secret talismans in his hands. Secondly, what kind of status did the dragons have? They were the descendants of ancient beasts. They were obviously a higher level life form than humans and demonic beasts. Under normal circumstances, they were already on the verge of ruling the world. If they were given another 60 years of lifespan, perhaps after 60 years, even if the demonic Tao and the righteous Tao joined forces, they would still be suppressed by them. Hearing that this Fulu could increase their lifespan by 10 years, the old dragons present all looked at Li Mu at the same time. Their dragon eyes shone brightly. How much is this Fulu? Do you have any more? I'll buy one. I'll buy one too. After Li Mu took out the heavenly secret talisman, the surrounding atmosphere suddenly changed. The old dragons who were nearing the end of their lifespan surrounded Li Mu, looking at him as if they were looking at a peerless treasure. Then they all looked at Ao Feng in unison. 10 years was not a short time. Even if it was not enough to break through, they could still enjoy 10 more years in this world. They did not care about the price of this Fulu. Even if they had collected many treasures in their lifetime, they could not take them away after death. Wouldn't it be better to exchange it for 10 more years of lifespan? The savings of ordinary dragons were limited. The commonwealth of the Black Dragon clan was in the hands of the Council of Elders. Faced with the expectant gazes of his clansmen, Ao Feng could not refuse. The number of dragons was low to begin with. For thousands of years, the rate of reproduction of his clansmen could not keep up with the rate of death. Any one of his clansmen was very important to the Dragon clan. Even though he knew that Li Mu was after the treasures of the Dragon clan, he had no other choice. Spiritual jades were just numbers to him. They could not compare to the lives of his clansmen. Ao Feng looked at Li Mu and said, "How many heavenly secret talismans do you have? I want all of them." Li Mu looked at Ao Feng and smiled. "You know, our Fulu school specializes in writing talismans. We have as many heavenly secret talismans as you want." If it were someone else, Ao Feng might have doubted the authenticity of this talisman. However, this was the Fulu school. In this world, no one knew Fulu better than them. Ao Feng only cared about the price. He looked at Li Mu and asked, "How many spiritual jades for one heavenly secret talisman?" People outside the Fulu school needed to prepare their own talisman liquid and 100,000 low-grade spiritual jades to write a heaven-grade Fulu. In principle, the difficulty of writing a saint-grade Fulu was more than 10 times that of a heaven-grade Fulu. Therefore, Li Mu charged him 1 million low-grade spiritual jades for one heavenly secret talisman, which was 10,000 mid-grade spiritual jades. It was not excessive at all. Li Mu looked at Ao Feng and said indifferently, 10,000. Ao Feng frowned. He knew that Li Mu was going to ask for an exorbitant price, but he did not expect his appetite to be so big. However, there was no market for saint-grade Fulu. Even if one had spiritual jades, they could not buy it. Only the Fulu school could make this item. It was reasonable for the price to be sky-high. In the end, he gritted his teeth and said, 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades it is. However, you are not allowed to raise the price in the future. The heavenly secret talisman will be provided to our dragon clan first. Actually, Li Mu didn't hear Ao Feng's last sentence clearly. His mind was filled with the 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades that Ao Feng said. The 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades he said were mid-grade spiritual jades. 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades for a Fulu. Even if it was a saint-grade Fulu, anyone who heard it would think that the buyer was crazy. Even Li Mu did not come back to his senses for a moment. The Dragon clan was rich and their default unit of spiritual jades was actually high-grade spiritual jades. In front of Li Mu and the others, they were like beggars who had never seen the world. But thinking about it, although humans and demons occupied land, the ocean was more than 10 times the size of land. The resources at the bottom of the ocean were more abundant. As the master of the ocean, the Dragon clan monopolized the resources of the ocean. Who could be richer than them? Ao Feng misunderstood his shock and immediately said, 10,000 spiritual jades, you can't go back on your word. Li Mu came back to his senses and said, I won't go back on my word. If I say 10,000 then 10,000. Originally, according to our Fulu school's rules, you have to provide the talisman fluid for the talisman. This time, the talisman fluid can be provided by our Fulu school. He sold 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades for a talisman. If they had to provide the talisman fluid, he would not feel at ease holding on to the spiritual jades. Unexpectedly, Ao Feng waved his hand and flatly refused. No need. The rules you have for others are the rules for us. If outsiders know, they will think that our dragon clan is so poor that we can't afford. Chapter 627. Li Mu's conscience would be uneasy if he had to provide the talisman liquid after selling it for 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades each. However, Ao Feng was so determined to not give Li Mu any leeway. He had no choice but to sigh in his heart. The world of rich dragons was not something poor people like them could understand. The Dragon clan was willing to pay 10,000 high-grade spiritual jades to extend the lifespan of their clansmen by 10 years. Who knew how many spiritual jades they were willing to pay to extend the lifespan of their clansmen by 60 years? Such a generous customer might not be found in the entire cultivation world. If he were to activate the sky-stealing array for Ao Feng and those extremely talented experts of the Dragon Clan, Li Mu would think carefully and weigh the pros and cons. If the extra 60 years allowed them to advance to the 8th level, wouldn't he be causing trouble for himself? However, if the target was these old dragons who were still alive, Li Mu wouldn't even hesitate to kill them. Even if they were given another 60 years, they were destined to not have great achievements. Using a large amount of spiritual jades in exchange for 60 years of lifespan was naturally a waste of the Dragon Clan's resources. However, to an individual, living was more important than anything else. One of the most painful things in life was that when one died, one's money would still be there. It was the same for dragon life. There were countless mineral veins under the sea. To the Dragon Clan, spiritual jades were just stones that they could pick up anywhere. Who wouldn't be willing to exchange stones for lifespan? Li Mu initially thought that Ao Feng was showing concern for the old dragons in the clan in the spirit of humanitarianism. However, when he left the West Sea, he realized that things weren't as simple as he thought. Ao Feng, this old dragon, wasn't as stupid as Li Mu thought. In front of the Dragon Palace, Ao Feng looked at the group of old dragons and said, "The clan spent countless resources to buy the divine secret talisman for you to extend your lifespan. I hope that you won't waste these 10 years. Before your lifespan ends, pass down another seed to the clan." Li Mu realized that Ao Feng didn't give them the divine secret talisman because he wanted them to break through before they died. Instead, he wanted them to use their remaining energy to give birth to 1 or 2 young dragons to ensure the continuation of the clan. In this matter, Li Mu had to admit that he was too narrow-minded. After returning to White Cloud Mountain with Ao Feng, Li Mu was faced with a problem. The powerhouses of the Black Dragon Clan were all left at Mount Baiyun to serve them for the next 10 years. How to restrain them was a problem that needed to be solved. It was impossible for the Black Dragon Clan to hand over their soul blood. The Dragon Clan had their pride and dignity. Not all dragons were as unprincipled as Xin and Xin. Similarly, it was impossible for them to become mounts. The pride of the dragon race did not allow them to become mounts for humans. In their deep-rooted view, it was more appropriate for humans to become mounts for the dragon race. Li Mu looked at Ao Feng and said, "If you don't hand over your soul blood, what if you go back on your word and betray us?" When Ao Feng heard this, it was as if he had been greatly insulted. He said angrily, "You are insulting our Dragon Clan. The Black Dragon Clan will definitely do what we promised you. We said 10 years and it will be 10 years. Not a day more, not a day less." Li Mu knew the Dragon Clan very well. The Dragon Clan had always been arrogant. Naturally, they would not easily do anything that would affect the reputation of their clan. Moreover, the Dragon Clan would not give up on any of their clansmen. As long as there were Dragon Clan hostages at White Cloud Mountain, they would have to be obedient. If there was nothing to do, he would let them stay at White Cloud Mountain and wait for orders. If there was anything, he would send them. After temporarily settling the matter of the Black Dragon Clan, the next thing he had to deal with was the spiritual jades that he had traded with the Black Dragon Clan. At the main peak of the Fulu school, Xianjizi, Yuzhenzi, Fudaozi, and the 2 supreme elders were gathered by Li Mu. Xianjizi asked solemnly, "Junior brother, you called us here. Is there something important?" Li Mu did not say anything. With a thought, he brought everyone to the Demon Emperor's cave abode. To discuss in the flask space, Li Mu's matter must be extremely important. Just as Xianjizi was about to ask, his eyes suddenly widened. He said in shock, It was not only Xianjizi. Everyone present, including the 3 supreme elders, widened their eyes and looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. The surface of the lake sparkled. Fishes swam in the lake, cranes danced in the air, and birds sang in the peach forest beside the lake. However, this was not what attracted them. What really attracted them was the mountain of spiritual jades that was casually piled up like a small mountain on the lawn beside the lake. Xianjizi stretched out his hand and a piece of spiritual jade flew into his hand. The spiritual energy contained in this spiritual jade was extremely rich. It was already high grade. The exchange rate between different spiritual jades was 100:1. In other words, he was holding 10,000 low-grade spiritual jades in his hand. There were hundreds of thousands of high-grade spiritual jades piled up here. As the leader of a sect, it was also Xianjizi's first time seeing so many spiritual jades. Everyone else's eyes lit up when they saw this scene. If a sect wanted to develop and grow, the most important thing was resources, including resources for its disciples and cultivation. A large part of the reason why Xuanzong was the #1 sect of Taoism was because the Taoism exchange gathered all the resources of the entire cultivation world, allowing Xuanzong to reap great benefits from it. With so many high-grade spiritual jades, even if all the disciples in the sect were to absorb them day and night, they would not run out in 3 to 5 years. From now on, the disciples of Fulu school could even eat spiritual jades like rice. It would not be long before the strength of Fulu school's middle and low-grade disciples would catch up to Xuanzong's. All they needed was an 8th-level sect-guarding powerhouse. Whether it was in terms of strength or influence, Fulu school would replace Xuanzong's position as the #1 sect of Taoism. The spiritual jades obtained from the Black Dragon clan were given to Xian Jizi to distribute. Li Mu then turned his attention to the other dragon clans. Li Mu had yet to come into contact with the dragon clans of the 4 seas. Qing Xen was a white dragon, but Li Mu had asked her before. Her father was an azure dragon and her mother was a white dragon. She belonged to the azure dragon clan of the South Sea. Among the dragon clans of the 4 seas, other than the Black Dragon clan, who considered themselves to be the highest-ranking dragon clan and did not intermarry with other dragon clans, the other 3 clans often intermarried for better reproduction. The baby dragons born in this way might be of the same color as their father or mother. Li Mu planned to let Qing Xan return to the South Sea to discuss the alliance with the dragon clan of the South Sea, while he himself would go to the East Sea personally. Firstly, he wanted to see the sisters Yin Xin and Ting Xin, whom he had not seen for a long time. Secondly, he could also discuss the alliance with the White Dragon clan. The strength and talent of the Dragon clan really made Li Mu envious. If he could completely turn a dragon clan into his own, perhaps it would not be long before a force that could contend with the ancestors of the demonic path would appear on his side. Li Mu first transmitted his voice to Qing Xan. Unexpectedly, after Qing Xan heard it, she did not hesitate at all and flatly rejected Li Mu. No, I escaped. If I go back, they will definitely force me to marry again. I won't go back even if I die. There is food and drink here, why should I go back? It was hard to imagine that a dragon's dream was to have food and drink. But since she was unwilling, Li Mu did not force her. For the dragon clan, the first priority was to reproduce and maintain the continuation of the clan. It was no wonder that Qing Xan was forced to marry. The earlier she married, the more time she had left to give birth to young dragons. It was extremely difficult for the dragon clan to reproduce. If every dragon clan married late and had children late, perhaps they would have gone extinct with the ancient beasts. It was no wonder that the relationship between the White Demon King and the sister's mother was opposed by the White Dragon clan. It was not easy for the dragon clan to reproduce. In the end, their own daughter ran away with a snake. Which parent would not be angry? As such, Li Mu first went to the East Sea and then returned with Qing Xan to visit the dragon clan of the South Sea. Li Mu did not know the location of the East Sea Dragon Palace. In the beginning, Tingxin often used the spirit snail to contact him. Later, the sisters were forced by their elders to cultivate in seclusion. Li Mu had not heard from them for a long time. The sea was vast and Li Mu did not know the location of the East Sea Dragon Palace. However, the dragon clans of the 4 seas were in contact with each other. Li Mu asked Ao Feng to accompany him to the depths of the East Sea. After not seeing them for a long time, Li Mu also missed the pair of clingy sisters. Chapter 628. Deep in the East Sea. There were no clouds in the sky and the surface of the sea was rippling. This place was deserted and there seemed to be no life. However, there was another world under the sea. Fish and prawns played on the shallow surface of the sea. Below the surface of the sea, there were aquatic creatures patrolling. Palaces made of crystal coral sat at the bottom of the sea. This was the dragon palace of the East Sea's white dragon race. At a certain moment, there was a subtle fluctuation in the sea above. 2 figures slowly approached the dragon palace. Soon they were discovered by the aquatic creatures patrolling around the dragon palace. 2 prawn soldiers swam over with weapons and shouted, "Who are you? How dare you approach the dragon palace?" Li Mu stopped in front of the dragon palace and looked at the 2 prawn soldiers. He said, "I'm a friend of the White Demon King. I'm here to find him. Please inform him." The 2 prawn soldiers looked at each other. One of them waved his hand and said, "What White Demon King? There is no White Demon King here. This is the Dragon Palace. Outsiders are not allowed to come close. Leave quickly or don't blame us for being rude." This was the East Sea Dragon Palace. After Heart Song and Heart Listening's mother revived, their family came here. Even if the White Demon King wasn't in the Dragon Palace, the 2 prawn soldiers shouldn't have such an attitude. Li Mu didn't waste time talking to the 2 prawns. He scanned with his divine perception and soon found the White Demon King's aura in a palace below. He didn't hide his aura. When he scanned with his divine perception, the White Demon King also found him. Li Mu sensed that the White Demon King was about to approach him in the palace when he was suddenly blocked by something. Li Mu's figure flashed and appeared above the palace. The palace was sealed by an array. The White Demon King and Li Mu looked at each other from the array and hurriedly said, "Why are you here? Leave quickly. This isn't a place you can trespass." The White Demon King's situation was clearly different from what Li Mu had imagined. Li Mu could tell at a glance that the array's function was to imprison. His face sank slightly as he asked, "What's going on? Where are Heart Song and Heart Listening?" The White Demon King said anxiously, "There's no time to talk about this. Hurry up and leave or it'll be too late." Before he could finish his sentence, a harsh voice came from one of the palaces. "Who dares to trespass into my East Sea Dragon Palace?" A white figure flew out from the palace heading straight for Li Mu. In the blink of an eye, the white light dissipated and a young man clad in silver armor appeared in front of Li Mu. The young man had horns on his forehead. He was a level 6 white dragon. Li Mu did not even look at him. He looked straight at the White Demon King and said, "I'll let you out first." After saying that, he raised his hand and pressed down on the palace below. Seeing that it was being ignored, the white dragon was furious and said in a deep voice, "How dare you, human? Don't be so arrogant." He quickly condensed 2 huge ice hammers in his hands and smashed them towards Li Mu's head. Li Mu pressed one hand against the array formation while his other hand slapped the white dragon. Boom! Under his palm, the formation that enveloped the palace didn't even last a breath before it collapsed. Bang! At the same time, the silver-armored young man's giant hammer also shattered. The white dragon felt a terrifying aura lock onto him and was choked without any resistance. His eyes were wide open, filled with shock and fear. This was the deepest part of the East Sea. Less than 10% of human cultivators remained here. With his level 6 dragon cultivation, he didn't even fear a level 7 transcendent human. However, he couldn't even withstand a single blow from this young man. Ao Feng stood silently behind Li Mu and watched. Li Mu's attack confirmed his guess. He must have received Ao Qing and Ao Xian's inheritance. Although he still looked like a human, he was no different from a dragon. His body was extremely strong. Not only did he not weaken in the water, he became even stronger. He was more like a dragon than a dragon. After the array formation was destroyed by Li Mu, the White Demon King immediately flew up. He looked at Li Mu in shock and muttered, Your strength?" Li Mu waved his hand and said, "Let's talk about this later. Where are Yinxin and Tingxin?" Thinking of Li Mu's strength, a glimmer of hope appeared in the White Demon King's eyes. He said, "They were taken to the North Sea. Go and save them. It's not too late." Li Mu frowned and asked, "Why are they going to the North Sea?" The White Demon King said, "The elders forced them to marry the silver dragon. I didn't agree, so they trapped me here. The elders have already gone to the North Sea. They want to help Yinxin and Tingxin form a half-dragon body first." Not long after, in the East Sea, 2 figures sped through the water. The experts of the White Dragon race had gone to the North Sea first. There were only some young and old dragons in the East Sea Dragon Palace. After Li Mu helped the White Demon King suppress the rebellious dragons, he immediately went to the North Sea. Ao Feng had already transformed into his dragon form. At this moment, he was panting heavily as he followed behind Li Mu with difficulty. He said weakly, slow down. I can't keep up." As a dragon, the absolute overlord of the water, his speed in the sea was actually inferior to a human's. At this moment, Ao Feng's heart was filled with humiliation. Li Mu had already informed Xian Jizi to have the experts of the Black Dragon race on standby in the North Sea. Then he rushed to the North Sea with Ao Feng. He had already learned the details of the matter from the White Demon King. Their family had lived very well in the East Sea in the beginning. They thought that the East Sea Dragon race had already accepted them, but they didn't expect the elders of the White Dragon race to have other plans. It was extremely difficult for the dragon race to reproduce. Tingxin and Yinxin's mother had already been engaged to the Silver Dragon race. Later on, she didn't want her fate to be arranged and escaped from the East Sea. After she met the White Demon King, what happened next happened. The White Dragon race had always been brooding over this matter. On the surface they accepted them, but secretly they had ulterior motives. There was a huge difference between the Dragon Clan and other clans. Clans with the bloodline of the Dragon Clan could transform into a true dragon through continuous transformations. In legends, carps leaping over the Dragon Gate wouldn't happen in reality. However, flood dragons, snakes, and other races with the dragon bloodline could only retain the pure dragon bloodline in their bodies through the dragon race's secret arts. Although their strength was still inferior to a true dragon after the transformation, the children they gave birth to would have the pure dragon bloodline. Even though the dragon race was very proud and viewed all races other than the dragon race as inferior races and didn't want the noble bloodline of the dragon race to be contaminated with their reproductive ability, if they didn't do so, the dragon race of the four seas would have gone extinct long ago. Inshin and Tingshin had half snake bloodline and half dragon bloodline. After removing the snake bloodline in their bodies, they would become true dragons. This was naturally a good thing for the white dragon race. It meant that they could send the two sisters to the silver dragon race for marriage. However, at that time, Inshin and Tingshin wouldn't be the green snake and white snake sisters that Li Mu knew. In addition, on this trip to the North Sea, other than saving the two sisters, he also had to save their mother. Back then, she had angered the silver dragon race by running away from the marriage. Although more than 20 years had passed, the silver dragon race still wanted the white dragon race to fulfill the marriage agreement and forced her to marry the silver dragon race. As a result, the white demon king was imprisoned. Ao Feng used all his strength to barely keep up with Li Mu. He couldn't help but say, the white dragon race didn't do anything wrong in this matter. Every dragon has the heavy responsibility of inheriting the race on their shoulders. As a dragon, she betrayed her race. If all dragons were like her, the dragon race would have long ceased to exist. If this happened to the black dragon race, I would definitely punish her according to the race's rules. Regarding this matter, Li Mu didn't argue with Ao Feng. As an individual, every dragon had the right to pursue happiness and love freely. However, for a race, the most important thing was to reproduce and strengthen. Regardless of whether it was the human race, the demon race, or the dragon race, it was the same. Li Mu didn't care about the other dragons, but he wouldn't sit by and watch Inshin and Tingshin be forced. Even though he knew that the transformation couldn't be so fast and he still had enough time, Li Mu was still impatient. He glanced at Ao Feng behind him and said coldly, "Can you hurry up? You're still so slow in the sea. You're really embarrassing the dragon race." Chapter 629. North Sea Dragon Palace. There were 4 major dragon clans in the 10 continents, each occupying a sea region. The Silver Dragon clan ruled the North Sea, and the billions of water clans in the North Sea all submitted to the Silver Dragon clan. It was a joyous day for the Silver Dragon clan. All the water clan masters gathered near the North Sea Dragon Palace. There weren't many dragons and it was difficult for them to reproduce. Therefore, marriage and reproduction were very important. As the overlord of the North Sea, the Silver Dragon clan had 2 joyous occasions. All the famous water clans in the North Sea came to congratulate them. Among them there was no lack of great demons with 6th realm aura. A human-looking old man with a turtle shell on his back walked to the Dragon Palace. After the guard recorded it, he said loudly, "Surging Waves Island's Master Rashi sends a spiritual armor." Then, a skinny man with a human head and a human body with 8 tentacles and a muscular man with a black dorsal fin on his back walked over. Commander Mo Yuanzhang sends 100,000 spiritual jades. White Shark Clan sends 10 beauties. The North Sea Water Clan masters all gave their gifts and walked into the Dragon Palace. This time, the Silver Dragon King and the 3rd Prince were getting married at the same time. It was a rare happy occasion for the Silver Dragon clan. They were connected by marriage to the White Dragon clan of the East Sea. It was said that the Silver Dragon King, who was still the Crown Prince at the time, had a marriage agreement with a White Dragon clan more than 20 years ago. However, the White Dragon had escaped before the wedding. This incident had once made the Silver Dragon clan a laughingstock in the North Sea. Now that more than 20 years had passed, the White Dragon Lady of the Dragon clan had returned to the clan, and the 2 clans had brought forward the matter of the past. However, after so many years, the Dragon Lady had married into the Silver Dragon clan again, and her status was naturally not as high as before. The Silver Dragon King was already at the 7th realm, and he already had several spouses. He only married a dragon girl from the White Dragon clan for the sake of procreation. However, all the sovereigns of the Dragon clan had to think of ways to pass down their outstanding bloodline, so the more spouses they had, the better. In addition, the Silver Dragon 3rd Prince was also going to marry a pair of sisters. These 2 sisters were of the Snake clan and had half of the Dragon clan's bloodline. After purifying their bloodline, they could give birth to children with pure Dragon clan's bloodline. Dragon ladies were very rare, and most of them were already partners of the same clan. Partial Dragon clan members like the 3rd Dragon Prince could only marry these half-dragons with impure bloodlines. Deep in the North Sea Dragon Palace, 2 silver dragons stood in front of a dragon palace, guarding the entrance. Inside the dragon palace, a woman stood there with a desolate figure. Beside her was a couple from the dragon tribe. The Dragon Tribe elder sighed and said, "If I had known that this was the elder's trap, I wouldn't have let you come back. We wouldn't have ended up in this situation." The old woman also sighed and said, "I pity those two children." In the corner of the Dragon Palace, In Xian and Ting Xian stood there. One was in a daze while the other looked depressed. Bai Tingxin originally thought that she had found her family after following her parents to the East Sea. She did not expect that not only were her movements restricted by them, but even the spirit conch used to contact Li Mu had been snatched away. Bai Tingxin gritted her teeth. If she had known this would happen, she would have taken more initiative and settled the matter earlier. If she had settled Li Mu at that time, she would not have returned to the East Sea, and the current situation would not have happened. They had not contacted each other for so long. She did not know if he missed them or if he had come to look for them. The East Sea was so big. Without someone to lead the way, he would definitely not be able to find them. In the center of the hall, the Dragon Tribe elder looked at his daughter who seemed to have lost her soul. A trace of sorrow appeared in his eyes. After a long time, he seemed to have made a decision and said in a low voice, "For so many years, I have been thinking for the Dragon Tribe. Today I want to do something for my daughter." Boom! In the North Sea Dragon Palace, one of the dragon palaces suddenly collapsed. Several figures flew out from it. The two guards at the entrance of the Dragon Palace were the first to notice and immediately turned into two silver lights to block them. A white light flew out from the figures and collided with the two silver lights. Then both sides retreated. As for the other figures, they quickly flew to the surface of the sea. "Ao Guang, what are you doing?" A stern voice suddenly came from one of the palaces in front. Another old man with white hair and beard appeared beside him in an instant. The Dragon Tribe elder looked at him and said angrily, "First elder, this is unfair to her." The White Dragon Tribe's first elder snorted and said, "Fair? Don't forget that as a dragon tribe, we should put our tribe first. She has already humiliated our White Dragon Tribe. Do you want her to humiliate us a second time?" As soon as he finished speaking, he wanted to chase up but was stopped by Ao Guang. "You overestimate yourself." He snorted and did not even look at Ao Guang. His figure disappeared on the spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the other four figures. They were only a few feet away from the surface of the sea. However, this distance could never be crossed. The White Dragon Tribe's first elder rolled up his sleeves and brought them back to the bottom of the sea. Then he locked the mother and daughters in another palace. After sealing the palace with a formation, he said to Ao Guang and his wife, "You have humiliated the East Sea. When you go back, you and your wife will be punished to face the wall for 3 years." Then he turned to the elders behind him and said, "I'm sorry. Our tribe members are ignorant and have made a fool of themselves." A Silver Dragon Tribe elder glanced at him and said, "There are a lot of people in the East Sea who don't know the rules. When you go back, discipline them well. Before you discipline them, don't let them come out and humiliate us again." The White Dragon Tribe's first elder's expression was a little unnatural. However, the Silver Dragon Tribe was stronger than the White Dragon Tribe. He could only smile apologetically and said, "I will discipline them well." At this time in a palace, a woman held In Xian and Ting Xian's hands and said guiltily, "It's mother who has implicated you." In Xian collected her disappointment and shook her head. "Mother, don't say that. You also fell into their trap." Ting Xian sighed and murmured, "Are we really not fated to be together in this life? If the heavens give me another chance, I will definitely not leave the divine capital." The incident just now was just a small interlude. After the interlude, the North Sea Dragon Palace quickly regained its peace. In the main hall of the Dragon Palace, the Silver Dragon Tribe and the White Dragon Tribe's elders took their seats respectively. The incident just now made the Silver Dragon Tribe's people look a little ugly. The White Dragon Tribe's elders could only lower their posture. After all, the Silver Dragon Tribe's strength was second only to the Black Dragon Tribe. Moreover, the powerhouses of the Silver Dragon Tribe still had a long lifespan. On the other hand, the White Dragon Tribe's strength was the weakest of the 4 seas. The 2 Seventh Realm Elders only had a dozen years left in their lifespans. In front of the Silver Dragon Tribe, they did not even have the confidence to speak loudly. In order to obtain the Silver Dragon Tribe's protection, the White Dragon Tribe had not only sacrificed their people this time but also brought a lot of dowry. Of course, the Silver Dragon Tribe also saw their predicament. They originally wanted to use the incident just now to make the White Dragon Tribe pay some other price. However, before they could speak, 3 Silver Dragon Tribe elders suddenly stood up and looked out of the palace. Then they quickly flew out. The 2 Seventh Realm Elders of the White Dragon Tribe also sensed something and flew out with the Silver Dragon Tribe. The seawater in the distance was deep and serene. In the eyes of other water tribe members, there was nothing there. However, in the eyes of the dragon tribe's powerhouses, there were 5 black giant dragons in the distant seawater rushing towards them. The first elder of the white dragon tribe looked to his side and asked in surprise, "You invited the black dragon tribe?" The first elder of the silver dragon tribe shook his head and said in surprise, "No, I thought you invited them." The first elder of the white dragon tribe was puzzled. "Then why are they here? To congratulate us?" The silver dragon tribe's reputation is so great that even the black dragon king and the 4 elders of the wind, rain, thunder and lightning tribe personally came to congratulate us. Chapter 630. Although the dragon races of the 4 seas were all part of the dragon race, they each had their own way of doing things. Other than the occasional marriage alliance, they did not have much contact with each other. This was especially so for the black dragon race, who thought highly of themselves. Because they were the most talented among the dragon races and had produced many powerful fighters, they did not care about the other 3 dragon races at all. The Black Dragon King and the 4 elders actually came personally for the marriage alliance between the North Sea and the East Sea. This was out of everyone's expectations. Although they were surprised, the Silver Dragon and the White Dragon elders immediately flew outside the North Sea Dragon Palace to personally welcome the Black Dragon race's arrival. This action naturally attracted the attention of the guests in the Dragon Palace. The elders of the 2 races were both Realm 7 fighters. Who was this person that was qualified for them to collectively welcome him? These water tribe powerful fighters did not dare to be negligent. They all came outside the Dragon Palace and stood respectfully behind the elders of the 2 races, looking ahead curiously. A few black figures gradually appeared at the end of their vision. Although they were still very blurry, the pressure coming from afar made everyone present feel a suffocating pressure. The black figures were extremely fast and gradually became clearer. Murmurs came from the crowd. "It's the Black Dragons." They actually came too. The Black Dragon race is the leader of the dragon races of the 4 seas. Is the Silver Dragon race so important? Under everyone's gaze, the 5 black dragons quickly arrived in front of the Dragon Palace and transformed into 5 human figures. 4 of them were elders with extremely powerful auras. The last one was a middle-aged man with a slightly weaker aura, but he also had Realm 7 cultivation. 5 Realm 7 fighters of the Black Dragon race came. The Silver Dragon race's first elder walked forward and smiled with cupped fists. 4 elders and the Black Dragon King's arrival should have been notified in advance so that we could prepare in advance. Facing the Silver Dragon race's first elder, Ao Feng and the other 3 elders did not speak. The Black Dragon King also maintained his silence. At this moment, the North Sea powerful fighters, including the Silver Dragon and White Dragon elders, realized that there was a human standing in front of the Black Dragon King and the 4 elders. However, everyone only had eyes for the Black Dragon race and ignored his existence from beginning to end. Now that they finally noticed him, they were shocked to find that this person was standing in front of the Black Dragon King and the 4 great elders of the Black Dragon clan, and the 5 experts of the Black Dragon clan seemed to be led by this person. Only then did the first elder of the Silver Dragon clan come to his senses. He was both surprised and doubtful, but he still looked at Li Mu kindly and asked, "This is?" Li Mu did not reply. He scanned the North Sea Dragon Palace with his spiritual perception and soon found 2 pitiful and helpless sisters locked in a palace. His figure disappeared, and when he reappeared, he was already in front of the palace. The elders of the Silver Dragon clan and the White Dragon clan were shocked. This was the first time they had seen a human being able to display speed comparable to that of the Dragon clan at a depth of 10,000 feet. "Who is it?" The 2 Silver Dragon guards at the entrance of the palace immediately discovered this uninvited guest, and they were just about to step forward to stop him when their bodies were sent flying through the air. Li Mu took a step forward. Suddenly, an obstruction appeared in front of him. It was the array formation that covered the entire palace. With a sweep of his aura, the array formation burst like a soap bubble. Li Mu took a step forward and appeared in the palace. The commotion outside immediately attracted the attention of the 3 people in the palace. The woman looked at Li Mu with surprise and confusion. After being stunned for a moment, the other 2 figures turned into 2 figures, one green and one white, and flew towards Li Mu. Yin Xen grabbed Li Mu's hand tightly, her face full of joy. Ting Xen, on the other hand, hung on Li Mu's body as usual, sobbing, "You finally came to save me. They bullied me and my sister." At this moment, the elders of the Silver Dragon clan and the White Dragon clan also rushed over. They looked at the scene in front of them in surprise. Li Mu took Ting Xen off her body and gently patted her head. He looked back at everyone and asked, "Who bullied you?" Ting Xen pointed at the great elder of the White Dragon clan and said, He stole my spiritual snail and forced me, my sister and my mother to marry someone else. He's the worst. The great elder of the White Dragon clan's face was gloomy. He was about to reprimand her when his expression suddenly changed. He crossed his hands in front of his chest. Bang! After a dull sound, his body seemed to have suffered a heavy blow. He flew out and all the bones in his body seemed to have fallen apart. Before he could react, his body was hit hard again. He fell from the sky to the ground. A crystal palace was smashed by him and a huge pit was formed on the ground. The experts of the aquatics who came to the North Sea Dragon Palace to congratulate them were all stunned. Someone dared to make trouble here? A figure flew out from the ruins of the Crystal Palace. As expected of the Dragon Clan, even after suffering such a heavy blow, he did not suffer any injuries. He just looked a little embarrassed. However, he felt endless humiliation when he suffered a loss at the hands of a human in front of the Dragon Clan and many other members of the aquatics. A long spear appeared in his hand and he said in a cold voice, "You're courting death." As soon as he said that, a spear light pierced through the space of 1,000 feet and headed straight for Li Mu. Ting Xian and Yin Xian, who had chased out of the palace, were shocked. Ting Xian's face was full of regret. She said in a panic, "What should we do? What should we do? I shouldn't have told him. He can't possibly be the great elder's match." Ao Feng glanced at her and said indifferently, "Don't worry. If Ao Yuan was his match, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state." Ao Feng knew very well that although Ao Yuan was older, his strength was only that of an ordinary 7th-level dragon. He could barely win against an ordinary 7th-level human. It was undoubtedly impossible for him to win against Li Mu. No one below the 8th level was his match, whether on land, in the sky, or under the sea. As expected, the great elder of the White Dragon clan was forced to retreat in front of everyone. The aquatics and dragons present could not believe that a human could suppress a 7th-level dragon at the bottom of the North Sea. Seeing this, the other White Dragon clan elder was about to make a move. Ao Feng glanced at him and reminded him, "I advise you not to move." At this moment, Li Mu was barehanded. The great elder of the White Dragon clan seemed to be taking a beating, but it was all physical pain. If they forced Li Mu to take out that spear or that bow, they would have to endure more than physical pain. However, the elder of the White Dragon clan obviously did not listen to Ao Feng's words and joined the battle in the next moment. Then, everyone saw a dazzling green light appear from the human's hand and land heavily on the elder of the White Dragon clan. Boom! He came quickly and left even faster. His body was sent flying by a spear, and another crystal palace was turned into ruins. The Silver Dragon clan elder and Silver Dragon King's expressions were ugly. This human caused trouble in the North Sea Dragon Palace. He clearly did not give the Silver Dragon clan any face. No matter what, they could not let him continue like this. The Silver Dragon King took a step forward. Ao Feng spoke again, "I advise you again. It's best if you don't move." The Silver Dragon King glanced at him and still rushed toward Li Mu without hesitation. Whoosh! Midway through his flight, a simple and unadorned bow appeared in Li Mu's hand, and he shot an arrow without hesitation. Before touching the human, the Silver Dragon King felt a strong sense of danger. This arrow made it impossible for him to retreat or dodge. He only had time to transform into his dragon form and forcefully block it with the strong body of the Dragon Clan. After a dragon roar that contained extreme pain, a rain of dragon scales fell from the sky above the Dragon Palace. The Silver Dragon King was covered in wounds. The scales on his body peeled off one by one, and he fell weakly to the ground. The White Dragon Clan's second elder had just climbed up from the ruins. When he saw this scene, he slowly lay back down. As for the White Dragon Clan's great elder, after seeing the power of this arrow, the humiliation and anger on his face instantly disappeared. The figure that rushed toward Li Mu also stopped abruptly. The entire North Sea Dragon Palace was dead silent. Li Mu flew back to Ting Xian's side. He looked around and asked, "Who else bullied you?" Wherever his gaze passed, everyone, including the two Silver Dragon Clan's elders, took a step back. Ting Xian and Ting Xian were already stunned by the scene in front of them. They were so stunned that they could not speak. At this moment, the Silver Dragon Clan's great elder glared at Ao Feng and said loudly, "Is the Black Dragon Clan betraying the Dragon Clan? You are not his match. What does it have to do with the Black Dragon Clan? Did we attack?" Ao Feng could not help but say, "Moreover, I already advised you just now. Did anyone listen to me?" The Silver Dragon Clan and the White Dragon Clan had a total of 5 7th realms. Among them, There were 2 from the White Dragon clan and 3 from the Silver Dragon clan. The Silver Dragon King had clearly lost the ability to fight back. As long as the Black Dragon clan did not attack, could this human fight against 4 of them alone? The Silver Dragon clan's great elder looked at Li Mu, whose aura had weakened by 20%, and said in a deep voice, "Attack together. You can't shoot many arrows." At this moment, Ao Feng knew that the Black Dragon clan could not sit by and watch anymore. As dragons, they did not want to help Li Mu fight against their own clan, but they could not let the White Dragon clan and the Silver Dragon clan continue to make mistakes. Not to mention that the 4 of them might not be able to turn the situation around even if they joined forces. Even if Li Mu was not a match for him, if he wanted to escape, no dragon here could stop him. Then what? The White Dragon clan and the Silver Dragon clan would definitely face his endless revenge. His revenge was not something that these 2 clans could bear. Ao Feng took a step forward and said in a low voice, "Stop." The Silver Dragon clan's great elder looked at him and said in a deep voice, "Is the Black Dragon clan really going to help an outsider fight against your own clan?" Ao Feng's lips trembled as he transmitted a few words to him. The Silver Dragon clan's great elder's expression changed slightly as he transmitted a message. "Is what you said true?" Ao Feng said indifferently, "You have no idea how powerful this person is. If the 4 of you attack together, at least one of you will die here today, and you won't be able to stop him. The next time he comes, he won't be alone. For the sake of the Dragon clan, let me remind you. If you still insist on doing things your own way, I can't do anything." The Silver Dragon clan's great elder's expression kept changing. Ao Feng saw that he wanted to retreat, so he took the initiative to say, "Fighting will hurt the harmony. How about this, everyone give me some face and sit down to talk." Li Mu had already vented his anger for Yin Xian and Ting Xian, and the Silver Dragon clan also wanted to find a way out. Under Ao Feng's mediation, they temporarily stopped fighting and came to the Silver Dragon clan's meeting hall. The White Dragon clan's great elder stared straight at Li Mu and asked, "Who are you? What's your relationship with them? Why are you interfering with our Dragon clan's family matters?" Li Mu did not have an easy answer to this question. In the past, Li Mu could be said to be their uncle, but the White Demon King had already broken off his relationship with him. Should he say that they were his godsisters? At this moment, Ting Xian, who was at the side, hugged Li Mu's arm tightly. She puffed out her chest and said loudly, "He's our man." Yin Xian heard this and took the initiative to hold Li Mu's arm. Li Mu felt the pressure from both sides. After being stunned for a moment, he looked coldly at the opposite side and said, "You bullied my woman. The White Dragon clan's debt, I'll settle it with you later." Chapter 631. Li Mu spoke confidently. His aura was so oppressive that the elders of the Azure Dragon and White Dragon could not raise their heads. Ting Xian and Yin Xian's actions reminded Li Mu that the 2 sisters had the bloodline of the dragon race and could be considered half a member of the dragon race. This matter was also considered a family matter of the East Sea dragon race. Li Mu was not related to them, so what reason did he have to stand up for them? It was different now. It was natural for a man to stand up for his woman. He had already occupied the highest moral ground. The White Dragon and the Silver Dragon race were at a disadvantage in terms of reason. The elders of the White Dragon and the Silver Dragon race did not expect things to turn out like this. This was originally a family matter of the White Dragon race, but now it had become someone else's family matter. If this person was weak, the dragon race would not need any reason at all. They would directly erase his existence and everything would be settled. Unfortunately, this person was extremely strong and had a close relationship with the Black Dragon race. The 2 races did not have the strength, so it was impossible for them to do that. The Silver Dragon race's Grand Elder could only bite the bullet and say, "The White Dragon race did not tell us about this, so we did not know. Since they are your wives, the marriage agreement with the Silver Dragon race is naturally cancelled. Your Excellency can take them away." Li Mu glanced at him and said indifferently, "I'll take away your dragon girls. I'll let you take them back in a few days. What does the Silver Dragon race think?" This meant that there was no way to be kind. The Silver Dragon race's Grand Elder asked with a sullen face, "Then what do you want?" At this moment, Ao Feng mediated, "Since you've done something wrong, you naturally have to pay some price. This is a matter of course. The mental damage of these 2 juniors has to be compensated." After the previous incident, Ao Feng already knew the meaning of mental damage compensation, and used it flexibly. The Silver Dragon race's Grand Elder Taoist priest said, "He also seriously injured our Dragon King." Ao Feng waved his hand and said, "There's always a first come, first served rule. You captured his wife first, so you were in the wrong first. Besides, the Silver Dragon King also took the initiative to attack. At that time I kindly advised him, but he just didn't listen. Who can you blame now? The great elder of the Silver Dragon clan could see that Ao Feng was on the side of the human. Although he didn't know what benefits the human had promised him, it was definitely not wise to go against the Black Dragon clan. The Silver Dragon clan had no choice but to accept this loss. It was just that he still did not understand Ao Feng's meaning and asked, "What is mental damage compensation?" Ao Feng said, "It's simple. It's just 100,000 high-grade spiritual jades." Before Li Mu could say anything, Ao Feng had already made the decision for him. This was because the Black Dragon clan had paid such a price back then. The Silver Dragon race's Grand Elder exclaimed in shock, 100,000. 100,000 high-grade spiritual jades was not a small sum. Even a large underwater mine would not be able to gather 100,000 high-grade spiritual jades. Although the Silver Dragon clan had accumulated more than 1,000,000 spiritual jades, that was the result of generations of accumulation. Taking out 100,000 spiritual jades at once was extremely painful. Meanwhile, Ao Feng added, 100,000 per person, a total of 300,000. The other elder of the Silver Dragon clan blurted out, "Why is there an extra 100,000? Ao Feng glanced at him and said, "Not only did you force someone else's wife, you even forced someone else's mother-in-law to marry your Dragon King. 300,000 spiritual jades isn't much. If this matter were to fall on my head, I would definitely exterminate their entire clan." As soon as he said this, the two elders of the Silver Dragon clan fell silent. If it was only this human, the Silver Dragon clan would do their best to keep him in the North Sea. However, the Black Dragon clan's powerhouses had turned out in full force and stood on the side of this human. If they did not agree, things would develop in an unpredictable direction. At that time, the Silver Dragon clan's losses would be more than 300,000 spiritual jades. So far, the Silver Dragon King was seriously injured, and several of the North Sea Dragon clan's crystal palaces had collapsed. Most importantly, the Silver Dragon clan had lost all face in front of the North Sea's aquatic creatures. It could be said that they had suffered heavy losses. In the end, they still had to compensate the troublemakers with so many spiritual jades. When had they ever suffered such a huge loss? With the Black Dragon clan standing up for them, they could only pinch their noses and accept it. The Silver Dragon clan's first elder nodded with difficulty and said, "We are willing to compensate." Ao Feng asked for 300,000 high-grade spiritual jades. After the Silver Dragon clan agreed, Li Mu did not say anything else. He had just caused a ruckus in the North Sea Dragon Palace and seriously injured the Silver Dragon King. It could be said that he had helped the White Demon King vent his anger. 300,000 spiritual jades to compensate Ting Xian and Yin Xian for their mental damage was not considered perfunctory. They were only frightened for a while and did not suffer any substantial injuries. Otherwise, Li Mu would not have let these two clans off so easily. After all, he was now their man. Li Mu's face was cold. He glanced at the two elders of the Silver Dragon clan and said coldly, "If Ao Feng did not plead for mercy for you, I would definitely have wiped out the North Sea Dragon clan today." Beside him, the two sisters Yin Xian and Ting Xian were holding his arm. Their eyes were shining, especially Ting Xian, who was staring straight at Li Mu. Her eyes were full of affection, and she was unwilling to look away for even a moment. Ao Feng was also stunned for a moment. He did not expect Li Mu to care about his face. If anyone else said that they would wipe out the North Sea Dragon clan, Ao Feng would laugh because it was a fool's dream. Since ancient times, no human had been able to defeat the Dragon clan in the sea. However, the man in front of him really had the strength. Li Mu glanced at the two elders of the White Dragon clan. Ao Feng immediately understood. He looked at the two elders of the White Dragon clan and said, "And you too. Outsiders don't dare to bully you, but you only dare to bully your own clansmen. You have embarrassed the Dragon clan. Take out 300,000 spiritual jades and this matter will be settled. Otherwise, no matter what happens in the future, I will not help you." He was not doing this for Li Mu's sake. He just felt that it was unfair. The Black Dragon clan had offended Li Mu and paid a painful price. It also made his heart ache. Seeing the White Dragon clan and Silver Dragon clan suffer the same thing as them, he felt much better. Even the Silver Dragon clan had surrendered. The White Dragon clan only had two elders who did not have much lifespan left. It was even more impossible for them to go against Ao Feng's wishes. They could only grit their teeth and accept it. Li Mu originally wanted to form an alliance with the Dragon clan of the Four Seas. However, it seemed that an alliance was impossible. After witnessing the strength of the Silver Dragon Clan and White Dragon Clan, Li Mu did not have any intention of forming an alliance with them. He thought that there might be differences in strength between the dragon clans of the Four Seas, but it should not be too big. He did not expect that only the Black Dragon Clan's strength was passable. The Silver Dragon King and the two elders were all trash. The White Dragon Clan was even worse. They only had 2 7th-level elders, and it was obvious that they did not have much lifespan left. It was meaningless to form an alliance with them. After receiving compensation for the two sisters' psychological damage from the Silver Dragon Clan, Li Mu brought them back to the East Sea. He was going to take 300,000 spiritual jades from the East Sea Dragon Clan before leaving with them. Although the East Sea was their home in a sense, the Dragon Clan did not have any human feelings in order to reproduce. It was better not to stay in such a home. In the East Sea Dragon Palace, Li Mu received 300,000 spiritual jades from the White Dragon Clan. The White Demon King held his wife's hand. Ting Xian and Yin Xian's mother looked at the Dragon Clan couple behind them and said, "Father, Mother, leave the East Sea with us." Ting Xian followed and said, "Grandfather, Grandmother, leave with us." Ao Guang shook his head and said, "No need. We were born in the East Sea and grew up in the East Sea. We don't want to leave here. Besides, we don't have many years left. The bottom of the East Sea is our home." Li Mu had heard the two sisters mention more than once that their grandfather and grandmother were very good to them. This Dragon Clan couple's cultivation was at the 6th level, but they would probably stay at the 6th level for the rest of their lives. Unlike Yin Xian and Ting Xian, they had a strong sense of belonging to the East Sea Dragon Clan. No one could force them to leave if they did not want to. However, if they left just like that and left them here to die, Yin Xian and Ting Xian would probably feel uncomfortable. Li Mu thought for a moment, then pointed at a palace behind him and said, "The two of you come with me. Inshin, you come in as well." Hearing this, Ting Xian puffed out her chest and said unhappily, "Why are you only letting my sister go in?" Letting Yin Xian go in was because she could help Li Mu set up the formation. However, if Ting Xian was not allowed to go in, she would definitely let her imagination run wild. Li Mu waved his hand and said, Okay. If you want to come in together." Ao Feng stood outside the palace and glanced at the two elders of the White Dragon Clan. He said, "You don't have much time left. If it wasn't for this incident, he might have used the Talisman of Divine Secret to extend your lives by 10 years. No. Talisman of Divine Secret." The two elders of the White Dragon Clan looked at each other. After realizing what Ao Feng meant, they saw regret in each other's eyes. Although 10 years couldn't let them break through to the 8th realm, they could protect the White Dragon Clan for 10 more years. However, it was useless to regret now. The White Dragon Clan's first elder, Ao Yuan, forced a smile and comforted himself. "Even if you give us another 10 years, it won't be of much use. The Talisman of Divine Secret is useless to us. Living for one more day was still living." These two dragons were just comforting themselves. Ao Feng didn't expose them. After a full 2 hours, Ao Feng and the other Dragon Clan experts suddenly felt that the spiritual energy in the surroundings was abnormal. Soon it returned to normal. Then a few figures walked out of the palace. Walking in front was a middle-aged couple from the White Dragon Clan. Ao Feng's gaze swept past them and the next moment he looked back. His dragon eyes were wide open as he said in shock, This couple was clearly Ao Guang and his wife who had just walked in. However, compared to before, they seemed to be dozens of years younger. Their white hair had turned black, and the wrinkles on their faces had disappeared. They looked radiant. When the mother and daughter stood together, they looked like sisters. Ao Feng looked at Li Mu and said in disbelief, What did you do to them?" Li Mu shot a glance at Ao Feng and said indifferently, "It's nothing. It merely extended their lifespans by 60 years. Chapter 632. 160 years. Ao Feng turned around and stared at the young Ao Guang and his wife. The aura of death and lethargy on the two dragons, who were nearing the end of their lifespans, had been replaced by vigorous vitality. This was not something that could be covered up by illusions or other magical powers. Ao Feng knew that the Divine Secret Talisman could help extend one's lifespan. However, it could only extend lifespan by 10 years for cultivators at the 6th realm and 3 to 5 years for cultivators at the 7th realm. However, Ao Guang and his wife had directly reversed 60 years. This was definitely not something that the Divine Secret Talisman could do. Ao Feng stared at Li Mu and asked, How did you do it?" Li Mu said indifferently, "Just set up a random array formation. The heaven-stealing array could extend the lifespan of at most 10 people at the same time. The cost of the array formation was related to the cultivation level and number of people whose lifespans were being extended. Yen Xian and Yen Xian's grandparents were only at the 6th realm. They only needed to set up a small array formation, and it would not consume too many spirit jades. With Li Mu's current wealth, he could definitely afford it. Ao Feng was stunned for a moment. Then excitement appeared on his face. As the great elder of the Black Dragon tribe and the most powerful member of the Black Dragon tribe, he was actually at a loss at this moment. He rubbed his hands and asked tentatively, "Can you also set up one for us?" Then he added, "The price is negotiable. 100,000, 200,000, 300,000 spirit jades?" He knew better than anyone what an extra 60 years of lifespan meant to the Black Dragon tribe. With the Black Dragon tribe's talent, this meant that he could easily advance to the 8th realm before his lifespan was exhausted. Ao Yu, Ao Lei, Ao Dian, and Ao and also had the possibility of advancing to the Dao integration stage. Once they advanced, their lifespan would be extended by another 60 years. At that time, the Black Dragon tribe would dominate the entire world. At this moment, Ao Feng seemed to have already seen this day. His eyes shone brightly. However, Li Mu's next words were like a bucket of cold water poured over his head, completely extinguishing his dreams and ambitions. Li Mu looked at Ao Feng expressionlessly and asked, "Do I look stupid?" After Ao Feng recovered from his excitement, he realized a problem. The reason why Ao Guang and his wife could obtain such benefits was because they were the grandfather and grandmother of Li Mu's woman. In other words, they were Li Mu's grandfather and grandmother. What was the relationship between Ao Feng and Li Mu? If there was a relationship between them, it would be a relationship between them as enemies. At this moment, Ao Feng wished that he had 1 or 2 beautiful granddaughters. Unfortunately, his son was disappointing and only gave birth to 1 son. Ao Feng looked embarrassed as he said to Li Mu, "I know that we had some misunderstandings before, but it's all in the past now." Li Mu pursed his lips and asked, "Misunderstanding? You don't want the sun shooting bow anymore?" Although he still wanted the sun shooting bow, it was obvious that he couldn't get it. He might as well give up on that thought. Ao Feng said firmly, No. Actually, the sun shooting bow didn't belong to the Black Dragons. My ancestor Ao Shen accidentally picked it up one day." Li Mu continued, "I made you lose a lot of spiritual jades. You won't hold a grudge against me because of this, right?" Ao Feng shook his head and said, "No, how could I? This is the compensation that I deserve." Li Mu smiled and said, "If you want me to help you set up this formation, it's not completely impossible. It will depend on your Black Dragon clan's performance in the future." Overall, Li Mu was satisfied with Ao Feng and the Black Dragon clan's performance in the past few days. At present, the Black Dragon clan's talent and potential were indeed the best that Li Mu had seen. If he could turn them into reliable allies, he would have another powerful force to fight against the Demon Dao. However, although the Black Dragon clan was strong, they were not under Li Mu's control. If he was not careful, he would suffer a backlash. Before he had absolute strength, it was impossible for him to set up the sky-stealing formation for Ao Feng and the others. Performance in the future was a very vague phrase, but at least there was still a glimmer of hope. The Black Dragon clan could only grasp this glimmer of opportunity and satisfy Li Mu. Only then would they have the hope of regaining their glory. At this moment, Ao Feng was extremely regretful. If he had known this would happen, he would not have wanted the sun shooting bow and would not have become enemies with the Fugu school. At the same time, the 2 elders of the White Dragon clan also looked regretful when they saw Ao Guang and his wife, who were dozens of years younger. This should have been the opportunity for the White Dragon clan to rise, but because of their wrong decision, they had missed the opportunity to increase their lifespan by 60 years. The 2 dragons' thoughts raced as they tried to think of a way to redeem themselves. Although Ao Guang and his wife's talent was not high, with an additional 60 years of lifespan, they would definitely be able to break through to the 7th realm. At that time, when the 2 of them died, they would be the guardians of the White Dragon clan. The 2 of them exchanged a few words through telepathy. The White Dragon clan's Grand Elder suddenly looked at Ao Guang and said with a solemn expression, "Ao Guang." The Grand Elder had supreme authority in the clan. Ao Guang immediately said, "Here." The White Dragon clan's Grand Elder Lao Dao said, "The 2 of us don't have much lifespan left. We can't protect the White Dragon clan for long. After our discussion, we've decided to appoint you as the new White Dragon King. From now on, the heavy responsibility of guarding the East Sea will be handed over to you." When had the 2 elders been so polite to him? They even wanted him to be the White Dragon King. Ao Guang was stunned on the spot, not knowing how to answer. The White Dragon Clan's Grand Elder looked at him and asked, "Are you unwilling?" Ao Guang came back to his senses and immediately said, "I'm willing. Ao Guang swears to protect the East Sea in our clan." Li Mu could tell that the series of actions of the two elders of the White Dragon Clan were done for him to see. These two old dragons were also nearing the end of their lifespan. They had their eyes on the sky-stealing array. He did not look at the two of them at all. He said to Yin Xining, "Let's go." At this moment, the White Dragon Clan's Grand Elder immediately stepped forward and said, "Sir, please wait. This matter is our White Dragon Clan's fault. 300,000 spiritual jades are not enough to express our apology. Please stay for a few more days and give us a chance to apologize." Li Mu did not respond. Instead, he looked at Yin Xining and Ting Xan and asked, "What do you think?" Ting Xan held Li Mu's arm tightly and said, "I'll listen to you." Yin Xining looked at her mother and saw that there was some reluctance in her eyes. She looked at Li Mu, nodded and said, "Then let's stay for a few more days." Li Mu did not say anything more. The White Dragon Clan had arranged a luxurious crystal palace for him. Li Mu sat cross-legged on the crystal bed and looked inside at the upper-level spiritual jades piled up like a mountain in the heavenly flask cave. His heart was already blooming with joy. The sisters had given all the spiritual jades to Li Mu, so that Li Mu's trip to the East Sea and North Sea this time was even more fruitful than the trip to the Black Dragon Clan. With these spiritual jades, the strength of the Fugu School's disciples would usher in a big surge in 2 or 3 years. At a certain moment, Li Mu withdrew his mind and looked at the door. 2 figures pushed the door open and came in. Li Mu looked at Yin Xining and Ting Xan and asked, "It's so late. Why don't you go to sleep? What are you doing here?" Ting Xan held Yin Xining's arm, strode to the bed and said, "We're here to rest. We're your women. Of course we should be with you at night." Li Mu was stunned and said, "That was just a temporary measure. If I hadn't said that at that time, what reason would I have to save you?" A sly look appeared on Ting Xian's face and she said, "What temporary measure? You've already accepted the dowry of 600,000 spiritual jades. Do you still want to go back on your